Everybody, welcome to another edition of the Breakfast Club. You're with Got That Funk here and my friend Raven there. How you doing, Raven? And just appearing in my lower screen, so now on your lower screen, it's Michael. Greetings, Michael.
Hey.
Hello.
How have you been?
Pretty good. You left the land of California smoke.
Yeah, here where I am in Missouri at the moment, there is not any California smoke, but it does stretch to the East Coast. I guess it just doesn't go over where I am at the moment.
Yeah.
But I did see a satellite photograph of it, which is kind of apocalyptic. I mean, the whole of Nevada and Utah was covered in smoke, and it was certainly pretty smoky when we left, although I have to admit, it was actually worse last weekend than it was when we left on Wednesday. So,
well, to be honest, I mean, it smelled like California for a while. The patterns you see on the weather, it's just following the diaspora of Californians that are leaving that state to our state and other states.
I think Colorado and Oregon separately are probably the two most likely places a Californian would go to, just in terms of what they're used to in natural beauty and also basic social attitudes, you know?
And I say these things as if I've lived in Colorado long enough to complain about it, but at one time I did live in California before I lived in Colorado, so I'm part of the problem.
And which problem? Because
the importing California to Colorado problem.
Right. Well, I guess I'm part of the problem then as well. I came in rather circuitous route, but yeah. But I mean, there's nothing wrong with moving from one place to another, right? There's no lines on the world, really. You go where the resources are. You go where the opportunities are. Any animal would migrate to where better resources would be,
But we do have this plan to honor those, imaginary lines in the sand and move all of the extra Democrats that New Jersey has down to Georgia, where we need, a few more Democrats, and then we can put our thumb on the scales and actually show that there's more progressive people in the country than election results would have you think.
As much as I think that's a laudable goal, you're not going to get me to move to Texas or Georgia. You know what I mean? I couldn't possibly be, oh yeah, we're safe, aren't we? Because we're already keeping Colorado purple.
Yeah, we're in a purple state, so you can't move.
Right.
I don't think there's all that many Democrats in New Jersey. I don't think it's as blue as people think it is. My experience here is
urban areas or what?
A lot of Trumpers here.
Excuse me, Bruce Springsteen.
Bruce
Springsteen.
I can barely hear you, Michael.
I said Bruce Springsteen.
Oh, the boss.
The boss. That's all you guys need.
Yeah, well, I don't know. All the voter suppression efforts that have been going on at the moment with all this stuff. And I do find it really frustrating because the DNC or the Democratic Party, I guess, whichever, they bleed a lot about it, but nothing really seems to be happening in terms of organized defense. Or is that just my perception?
Nobody seems to want to go the nuclear route and do things like end the filibuster to actually get things done, because they're always worried now, what's going to happen if, the shoe's on the other foot and we are the ones who need the filibuster to shut some evil down. And having just left the era of Trump, I think they're even more afraid to get rid of the filibuster because, maybe they realize that saved America a few times. There are some things that should not be put up to a majority vote, like, removing the civil rights from minorities.
Sure.
And every time they're standing up for that, they need that filibuster sometimes because, there's a party of racists on the other side.
Well, I mean, and that is the problem that needs to be addressed is the surrender of the GOP, however ancient that surrender may have been, to sort of white supremacy and minority rule.
Raven, you
Minority rule and a minority political party, because the Republicans aren't half the country, even, for one thing, and a minority of them are hardcore Trumpers.
So what was that, Michael?
Are you going to join me in just saying the obvious things that piss people off?
Oh, I missed what you were talking about.
There's a party of racists.
Yes, there is a party of racists. Yes, the Republican Party.
Yes. Also, Paul's wearing a Cardinals hat and like a Cardinal red shirt. When's the last time you heard of a Cardinal being spotted in St. Louis? Because I grew up in Arizona primarily, and we had the Arizona Cardinals football team, and I never saw a Cardinal growing up in Arizona. I was like, why aren't they the Roadrunners? Cardinals are from a time before we had pollution and climate change.
Right.
Like, maybe historically they lived there, but like I have not seen a Cardinal in real life.
Neither have I.
Really?
I've seen pictures.
I see them every day. We have them here, lots of them.
That's nice to hear.
They should be the New Jersey Cardinals.
Yeah. I saw what I thought was a cardinal once, but I was told it was in California, and I was told it was a red jay, not a blue jay, but a red jay, and I never heard of that before. So I'm not sure if it was like an aberration, but it looked exactly like a blue jay, except it was red, So, but I don't think we get cardinals in California, or if we do, that was the only one I ever saw, and that was when I was a little kid. And when I was a little kid, in Forestville, in Sonoma County, which is on the Russian River, there were freaking gazillions of birds. And when I go back now, you never see a flock of birds anymore. You never see birds like they used to be, like swarms of mosquitoes. There were so many in the sky, and every time I've been back, I've not seen flocks of birds anymore. There don't seem to be that many, and I just think human beings have squeezed them out.
Paul, when you go to St. Louis, do you get the same hotel room like every time you go?
No.
Because the motif seems similar, but the painting keeps changing.
No, this is the same one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the other way around. I don't know.
Anyway, so what's going on with the fact that there's actually Democrats threatening to sabotage Democratic legislation? It's not just Joe Manchin. It's like 8 or 9 people in the House who are saying, you got to pass this before you pass that. And all the progressives in the House say, no, you got to pass this one before you pass that one, or we're not going to let you pass it. I mean, if we can't get this stuff together on the left, we're never going to get reelected. And it's going to be hard enough anyway with gerrymandering to get reelected. You know what I mean? That's a whole different conversation.
I think the problem is they just don't trust that they're going to pass the budget reconciliation. That's why they're demanding them either together or one before the other, just to make sure that we get it.
Right, but there's like some that are sabotaging it because they I don't understand why how hard would it be for them to do both at the same time? Is that possible even, or impossible? I mean, I don't understand whose advantage it is to even really make these threats. You know what I mean? Let's just pass this shit and get it over with.
Well, that's the thing, is they're not going to. The budget reconciliation they want to do will not pass. That's not going to pass, which is why the threats are being made. If you want to get the other one done, you have to get the budget reconciliation through. It's their way.
$3 trillion one.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And the thing that makes me mad about that was Joe Manchin and Bernie Sanders came to that figure of $3.5 trillion as a compromise, and I thought it was a brilliant compromise because Joe Manchin pitched $2 trillion and Bernie pitched $6 trillion, so they agreed to 3.5, which is perfect negotiating, right? Because 3.5 is less than halfway there between 2 and 6. So Joe Manchin can say, "Hey, I didn't even give them half of what they want," But on the other hand, Bernie got to say, look, we got 75% extra from what their offer was. So we've increased it by that much. And that's a win for both sides. That's perfect. That's the perfect example of a compromise.
Right. But Joe Manchin's not real. I mean, he's a Democrat. Yeah, but he's not really a Democrat. He's closer.
So there's loads of them like that, even in the House. Those are the ones in the House that are the problem.
Right. But I mean, he negotiated that 3.5, but now he's not going to vote for it, though. Just like the Republicans always do. I'll negotiate this. I'll say it's good. And when it comes time to vote, I'm not going to vote for it. So Joe Manchin helped negotiate this $3.5 trillion, and now he won't vote for it. Why? Because he's a piece of shit.
Well, Raven, this goes back to what you said some time ago. Now I can't remember when, but our government was set up to function, assuming that the people in it would have some level of honor or personal dignity,
and they don't.
They don't. And we live in a culture, unfortunately, which apparently us as citizens have fostered, where these people can get away with this shit with little or no consequences. So why shouldn't they try?
Just like the ACA, all of the Republicans, they watered down the entire bill, that the Obamacare, they watered it down to nothing. It's nowhere near what it was supposed to be. They fought like hell. They held everything up. They demanded that their concessions be met, and then they didn't vote for it.
Right. Not a single one of them voted for it.
Doing the exact same thing.
Well, they did the same thing for the American Rescue Plan as well. I mean, and then after the rescue plan got passed by the Democrats, these Republicans had the audacity to go on Twitter and go on the news and say, hey, we've got you this great money that it's available for you, blah, 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 and acted as if they did vote for it when they didn't, which is obscene to me. And the media really should be calling them to account on stuff like that.
And no honor. That's what it is. No honor. They're assholes. They're scumbags. They don't give a shit. They don't care what's in the best interest of the country. Their priority is making sure that they can secure their paycheck. That's it. The paycheck that they get for doing absolutely fucking nothing. Because most of them do absolutely fucking nothing.
I understand the lack of trust. After seeing a whole ass Supreme Court justice stolen, when they said that they would act one way, and then when it came down to it, they acted the complete other way, just to eke out one more Supreme Court justice. And that lack of trust is going to be generational.
Well, I agree with that. Oh shit, I did it again, Joe. I agree with that, and I'm sorry to sort of like derail the conversation slightly, but you just reminded me of something else, Michael. Yesterday, we looked into, me and my gal, we were like, why the hell is DeJoy still in charge of the post office, right? And long story short, like Biden can't even fire him.
Nope.
Yep. And Trump installed some of the people who were in the basically the board that's above Louis DeJoy who could get rid of him. And there are some empty slots. Now, Trump, they didn't let Obama fill some of those empty slots when Obama was president. Sound familiar, Merrick Garland? Right? And anyway, so they didn't let Obama fill some of those Postmaster General advisory board or whatever slots. So Trump got to fill them. And there's still some empty slots. And this should be one of the Democrats' top priorities, along with judges. You know what I mean? We got to fix the post office, man, because they're deliberately sabotaging this stuff.
Yeah.
And this is basic infrastructure we're talking about.
And well, that was the thing. And that's why, I got I ended up not getting too much into it, but I saw basically people attacking Biden. Or why doesn't he fire him? Like, because he can't. Like, will you please learn how fucking government works already? It's just so frustrating. That's like, and we all walk around with a portal to all of human knowledge in our pockets. It's no reason not to know why something is or isn't. In
the defense of everyone else, that particular the Joy's position is unusual in that way.
Sure.
Any other position throughout the entire government and through the cabinet, everything else at that level, the president has direct control over.
Right.
That one seat, that one office, he has nothing. He can't do shit.
We have Congress to thank for that from decades gone by.
Right. Yeah, the idea was they didn't want the post office to be politicized. How ironic.
Right.
you know. So uh, you know, so it's really frustrating again because it's like if you're sitting there and you're wondering, well, why doesn't person X do something or something not, look up what the process is and see. And then if you see, hey, that person does in fact have the power to do what should be done and they're not doing it, well then by all means give them both barrels, but make sure that that's the case. It's just like the people are like, well, why haven't the Democrats done a constitutional amendment to do X, Y, or Z? I'm like, because do you actually understand the process, how it goes? How many votes you actually need to through the House and the Senate and then the states. And then they're like, "Oh, we could bypass the states by the Congress by going to the states." I'm like, "That's an even harder road." So it's like, and by the way, the Republicans control like 31 states. So, it's just not going to happen. I mean, and that's why I kind of feel like there's certain issues that are literally a waste of time to even dream about, because it's like we're so far away. And what I would say there is, okay, now, since we can't do the thing we need to do, what do we need to do to make it possible to do the thing we need to do? Okay, it means winning the state houses. It means doing something about the gerrymandering in various states. It means, so not only do you have to win the state legislatures, you have to win the govenorship. Well, how do we do that?
Joe, that would take loads of organization and effort.
Yes. Right. Yeah, exactly. People, and this is, I get part of the problem of our society. We're so used to the easy, quick answer. You think about every like weight loss ad. Oh, just take this pill or do this magic exercise, and pounds will just fall off. You don't have to actually do anything. You don't have to change your behavior. Magic. Magic will fix everything. So everyone's used to this magic, thing that, and by the way, magic never works because there's no such thing as magic. But yeah, it really does. It is upsetting. I was listening to Black Culture Geeks this morning. I wasn't on, but I was in the chat, and we were talking about how one of the things that has come up over time. Obviously, we're trying to deal with systemic racism and things like that. So people say, well, let's do this like 1-day boycott or 2-day boycott. Well, that's a pissing in the wind. Because what happens is if you're about to boycott X, Y, or Z, people have a tendency to go, well, I'll stock up on whatever so I can get through that time. Well, so then you're not affecting their bottom line at all, zero. To actually do a boycott. Plus, even if you did like a longer one, you have to have some evidence that it actually, some metric to be able to measure whether it actually had an impact. So we were saying like probably the best thing to do. Because I said, unless it shows up in a quarterly report, no one's going to know or care or be able to even tell that it actually happened, because you can't tell from a week over week. So you'd literally have to do like a 90-day campaign, and probably the best way to do it is to pick one or two corporations specifically, because then you can see, okay, how does this quarter compare to last quarter? How does it compare to that same quarter the year before and the year before that? And now you'd actually have some data, and that actually something that could shake. But that means, hey, we're going to have to go 90 days and boycott whatever it is and sustain it. And so people have to then not make the bullshit excuse like they always make for LGBTQ things and say like, well, I'd like to boycott Chick-fil-A, but it's so delicious, which it's not. If you think Chick-fil-A is delicious, you need to have your taste buds checked.
So I've got a solution for one problem that Paul has, that it doesn't involve a boycott per se. We're going to need Joe to round up some of the smartest technical wizards to do this. It's going to be a plugin that we just promote to everyone that goes on your browser, and every time you go to Amazon.com, instead it'll go to smile.amazon.com and send 10% of your purchase to whatever charity that you chose, right? But Amazon plans on people forgetting that their charity wing exists. And if we just turned all of the purchases that people just can't stop making because they're addicted to using Amazon, if we just turn that into, a percentage of it going to charity because we're opting into the charity all the time, then we might be able to put a dent in the profits. If you can't boycott Amazon, at least you can choose to have a portion of the proceeds go to a charity.
That's cool. I like that.
But we need a plug-in that reminds people, hey, remember about that charity thing where we're trying to hurt Jeff Bezos? You know, this plugin would, anytime you use your browser, if you try to go to Amazon.com, it'll switch it to smiled on Amazon.com. That's all we need.
I like that. That's creative. That's a good solution.
Also, Joe, because you popped in, I had a really, really woke moment this week. Like, totally woke. Listen to me. Hear me out. You reminded me when you said that, you know, magic doesn't exist, right? There is no such thing as ghosts that can hurt people. Because if there were, we would have less Caucasians.
Good point.
Because all the bad shit that we did would come back on us, you know, and then haunt us. There'd be a hell of a lot less Caucasians if ghosts were real and they could hurt people.
This is true.
Magic doesn't exist.
I think that is a reasonable argument.
I want anybody who's anti-woke that watches our show to just be like rolling right now, just like stewing. I've said so much in so little time already.
Yeah, I replied to I stopped watching Bill Maher, but he still comes up on my feed. I hadn't gotten around to unfollowing. And so I watched this one segment, and it's, you know, it's the same fucking drum. Oh, woke, and identity politics. And I'm like, dude, you're going down the Dennis Miller route just more slowly. You're heading in the same fucking direction. And people were jumping on me. I'm like, no, it is the same shit, because that's all he complains about. I'm like, it's like we had people try to overthrow the government. But and now we have even more and more evidence that that's literally what that was. That was an attempt to overthrow the government. There's no question about that now.
Right.
But the thing we have to worry about is, you know, some people on Twitter get upset about, you know, one thing or another and scream about it. And I'm like, and I keep saying to Bill Maher, two things. One, if people on Twitter don't matter, then stop fucking talking about them. Stop wasting so much time on them. And two, once again, I keep reminding him that it wasn't woke liberals that got him actually canceled off of ABC. So for all the complaint about cancel culture, like it wasn't us that canceled you, you motherfucker.
Right. Well, I can't stand him very much. I mean, sometimes I do laugh at his jokes, but I generally speaking hate his politics with a passion. Right. And it really does make me sort of irritated, him pretending to be some kind of liberal voice or whatever, when he's anything but. He's it's disturbing to me, because it's just another one of these people who basically is shifting the window without and all the while claiming he's doing everybody a favor. It really annoys me.
Well, especially and the people who jumped on me, they're like, well, he's liberal because he attacks Trump. I'm like, yeah, there's Republicans and former Republicans that attack Trump too.
The Lincoln Project.
Yeah, John Kasich is conservative. He's a real conservative. He's as conservative as they get, and he hates Trump. So that doesn't make you a liberal just because you're anti-Trump. And very, and yeah, Maher's still saying a few liberal things, but far less than he used to. And that's my whole point. And so someone says, said, well, basically attack me saying, that I was saying he was equivalent to Dennis Miller. I said, no, you must have a reading comprehension problem. I'm saying he's going down that same road. He's not there yet. See, that's how roads work. You start at the beginning of the road and you get to the end of the road, and he's not at the end of the road. He's not at the beginning of the road. He's somewhere along the road. The Dennis Miller's at the terminus, and Bill Maher is heading toward the terminus, but he's not there yet. It's just like the people who when they want to deny global warming because we're not a flaming ball of fire yet, although we're getting there rapidly. That somehow that we're not heading in that direction.
As being as generous as I can be to Bill Maher, you mentioned about don't complain about Twitter if it pisses you off so much or whatever. Stop. Comedians struggle for source material, and I think Twitter's fucking low hanging fruit for anybody.
Yeah.
So I think that's where it all stems from. It's just really easy to find stuff to complain about on Twitter. It's like the other day, Stephen Colbert made a joke about it because they're testing out like a dislike button on tweets, but you can't put it on the original tweet, but on replies to the tweet, you can press like or dislike now. But the person who puts the tweet out there doesn't see the dislikes. Only Twitter gets to see it, right?
Oh, okay.
And they're testing this. And Stephen Colbert goes, "Oh, good. A way people can show their disapproval on Twitter at last."
I mean, the thing about Bill Maher, though, is that his contention is that society as a whole is giving too much credence and too much oxygen to Twitter. Okay, I probably agree with that. But then he gives every fucking week he goes off about Twitter. So it's like, dude, have you ever heard of the Streisand effect? I mean, you're literally doing what you're telling everybody else not to do.
Right.
So Vegas wants to know how
Yeah,
much
I'll put that up, actually. Hang on. There you go.
Yeah. Joe, how much does Maher have to conform to your opinions to be good?
He has to stop using right-wing talking points. How's that? I think that's a reasonable start.
So if we said the talking point and we couldn't tell whether it was Bill Maher or Republican if we did a quiz,
right?
Stop doing that shit.
Exactly. That's my whole thing. Because again, I don't agree with everyone on the left either. Again, I'm further toward the center than everyone on this panel and most of the people we think of, in our circles. So that's my whole thing. So if he's pissing me off and I'm fairly close to the center, then he's fucking up.
Right. I think that's the comment. Yeah.
And again, if that's where he wants to go, that's fine. But then stop pretending he's something he's not, because he's not that. He's far less liberal than he was. He has a lot of conservative views. He's liberal about a few things.
Well, I mean, being a self-confessed pot smoker does not make you a liberal.
No, because a lot of right-wing libertarians have been pot smokers for ages and been talking to decriminalize pot for decades.
And a lot of pot smokers are straight up apolitical. They couldn't give a fuck. I wonder why.
Yeah. So I don't think it's too much to ask and say, hey, don't use right-wing. In fact, here's my thing, and I never really finished the series, and who knows, maybe I'll dig it back up because I'm making steps toward actually starting to make videos again. But I had two parallel series planned. One was why the right is wrong, and the other is where the left goes wrong. So my premise is that the left isn't always right, but the right is almost always wrong. But the left isn't perfect either and has a bunch of his own problems, and I wanted to then point those out. And this way, by having both out there, no one can accuse me of, like, if people on the left couldn't say, well, I'm some right winger. No, I have a big problem with the right wing. And this way I can get it both out there, because I would like the left to be better and I like us to win more. But and that's the thing. It's just that I was going somewhere with that. Anyway, you get the point.
If you're arguing about, if you're cleaning up the left, some of the arguments that you make, if they stand the test of time, you will be cleaning up the right in time.
Right.
Position switch. Like 10 years ago, we were yelling about anti-vaxxers for a completely different reason. They were all on the left.
Right. That's correct.
All of those things that we said about those anti-vaxxers, they've stood the test of time, but they're now things we said about people on the right.
And you actually think Michael, you reminded me of the point I was trying to make, was that in my criticisms of the left, I'm going to be very cautious not to basically adopt the rhetoric of the right wing, because I have disagreements with the left wing for completely different reasons, and I
know you could walk a tightrope like that, Joe.
Was that?
That's a tightrope you'd be walking, bro. That's a tightrope.
Hey, I'm the most agile fat man you've ever seen.
So, I mean, one of the things that Maher does that drives me crazy is he does. It's not so much like the right wing talking points. It's similar though, where it's issues like Big Red or Jigglypuff. He'll find the most outrageous person making an argument on Twitter.
Oh,
and
right.
And then use that person as the example. And this is where the left goes wrong. But that's one person.
Right.
You know, that's Jigglypuff in a crowd looking ridiculous. It doesn't mean that everybody is that person.
Right. If you could find a group of people on the left doing that, or you know, like okay, I might say like the Bernie or bust people, because then that's a bunch of people. They're not all the people, but they're a group of people. Not just ooh, it's reading your shirt. Well, there's a difference between being relatable and being an idiot.
I think for a long time, people were very standoffish in trying to change people's minds on the internet. Very hostile, even.
Yeah.
And it was maybe more palatable to the viewers that agreed with them. They were speaking people's minds for them and getting views and clicks and whatnot. But did the people who came with honey change any more minds than the brash ones?
Yeah.
I don't know. We didn't see as many of those people because they weren't viewed a lot.
I'd like to say, in response to Vegas's question, which I will put up, even though we're already talking about it, how do you suppose you're going to change any minds if you aren't relatable? I personally learned, as far as the internet is concerned, way before I ever put my face on camera, to not try to change anybody's mind. I will stay my piece. I'll listen to their piece. I might retort once or twice, but at the end of the day, all I can do is put my shit out there, and they can do with it what they want. If it changes their mind or not is not even up to me. And it's even if it would change their mind, it's almost definitely not going to happen on the spot. I have never met anybody who changed their mind as a result of a heated conversation, ever.
Or a calm one, for that matter.
Well, I mean, calm ones, you might be able to change someone's mind because you're being calm and you're showing them the kind of respect that makes them receptive to your point of view. The issue is when people are hostile towards one another, or they are seldom receptive to the other person's point of view, no matter how valid it might be.
Well, also, and I want to address it too. I made a flippant answer. I want to make a serious answer. The thing is that you got to understand who the audience is. So the series Where the Left Goes Wrong, I'm not appealing to people on the right. I'm not trying to make the people on the right agree with me because they already hate the left. My point is to talk to people on the left and say, hey, look, I'm on your side. I agree with you in principle, but here's where we're messing up. Like we've talked several times here about messaging, about how we get our message out, or how poorly our messages are received and why that is. So it's reasonable to have a conversation with the people you mostly agree with and say, hey, here's where I think we're getting lost in the weeds, and how we could redirect our efforts, how we should focus our efforts, or what efforts we're not making that we should be making. But if I'm talking to the left, I don't give a fuck what the response from the right is, because at that moment I'm not trying to reach them. If I'm talking about where the right goes wrong, why the right is wrong, that in some way I'm hoping maybe to get the people on the fence line. Well, to be quite frankly though, when I started my channel, like Paul said, I didn't really, I won't say that I'm not hoping to change any minds, but that wasn't the main focus. And I'm certainly not I've never been aiming at the fundamentalist, because first off, even in a calm conversation, the fundamentalist is not going to change overnight. It's going to take a constant, steady stream of probably several different lines of attack to get that person to change. And I'm not that I'm not interested in that. I don't have the energy for that fight. I don't have the patience for it. I don't have the temperament for it. What I'm aiming at, I've always been aiming at, are those people on the fence, the people in the middle of the argument, or maybe leaning a little bit one way, but they're not fundamentalist about it. That the people that are reachable by normal argumentation, logic, and data. Someone who basically is going to look at any data you present and call it fake news. I don't have time for that. I mean, so maybe somebody else can do that, but that's not going to be me. So I don't need to be relatable to the fundamentalist, because I'm not trying to reach the fundamentalist.
Well, I don't think I've ever necessarily been aware that I've changed anybody's mind as a result of a video that I've made. But back in the days, and we've all been on YouTube long enough to remember when you could send someone personal messages across YouTube, right? And I'm sure, like the rest of you, occasionally I get a message from someone saying, "Hey, I don't agree with everything you say, but you really showed me a different way of looking at things," or something along those lines.
Right.
Because some people have been so used to thinking inside their own little box, they don't realize there's maybe a different way, a different vector from which you can look at stuff.
Well, do you guys remember Losoyo?
Who?
Losoyo.
I've
Okay.
heard of that person, but I never watched
So
him.
when we met Losoyo, he was a evangelical Christian.
Mm-hmm.
Over time, and it wasn't any one conversation or any one person, it was a collective effort. Over time, he went from being an evangelical Christian to being an atheist. And now I was one of the first people he came out to. In fact, I might have been the first person that he came out to. So clearly, in some way, in his mind, something, I was at least part, he identified me as part of the people who helped change his mind. But again,
and
he
you were
was
safe enough to talk to as well. He identified you as a safe confidant.
exactly. So I actually carried that knowledge for a few months before he actually came out to the rest of the community. So the thing is, though, is that even though he was evangelical, he was never a radical. He was never a fundamentalist. And so, so he was a reachable person. And that's why I engaged him, and we had great conversations and positive and relatable conversations. Whereas someone like Rancan Campbell, I never even tried because he was a fuck nut.
Something I'll say about Losoyo, which, correct me if I'm wrong, it's obvious to me from the outside that he's sick of the atheist-theist argument.
Oh,
now,
yeah.
Having seen so much vitriol in it, he now spends his time talking about Star Trek. Right. And does not want to engage on that other conversation anymore. He gave up on it.
Oh, yeah.
And part of that was part of his journey.
Well, right. And unfortunately, in his case, I don't know all the details, but I got the impression from him, the little bit I've talked to him about it, is that his deconversion affected his marriage, and that's why he ended up getting divorced.
Okay.
So, I mean, I had, after the first Madness Mayhem and charity event, now, like, I didn't do that event to gain subscribers or to make my channel bigger and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I think the history of it at this point, looking back, kind of speaks for itself. I never gained any kind of anything. I didn't get anything from it, which is fine. It wasn't about that. It was a charity event. But I did get a small following after the first event. I got a small following of trans women, and they sent me messages thanking me for doing the show, thanking me for having my channel and doing what I do on YouTube. And for a long time, and it bothered me for a long time. Like, I didn't understand why, because I didn't, back then, I didn't present as I never claimed to be, even way back then, I never even claimed to be non-binary. At that time, I never even heard of non-binary. But I had gotten a small following of trans women, and it was like the weirdest thing. And now I look back and I think they could recognize a kindred spirit. I mean, maybe that was it. But yeah. Not yet, Tommy. Not that I know of. I did have somebody who I don't know contact me on Twitter asking for information. They said that they're going to be helping with the fundraiser, but it's Black Guy TV or something like that. So apparently him and somebody that goes by Miss Parker are supposed to be running the fundraiser. But I haven't spoken to Pimp Monk about details.
I just misinterpreted what Tommy said in the chat. I thought he was trying to set you up with somebody. Why would you want to? Oh, yeah, he's a pimp. Got
it. Pimp Monk is supposed to be putting together a fundraiser to help me with transition.
That's really kind.
Oh. You needed like a date and time for.
Right. Well, I mean, apparently, I don't, because he's done fundraisers for people before. I know he did one for Galen. And I mean, supposedly they raised a good, a decent amount of money. I'm not that familiar with Pimp Monk and how he does things. It's clear that he's not as thorough and as strict and organized as I was about doing fundraisers, I was kind of psycho and mental about them. Um, his style is just, I think, much more loose, and it happens when it happens, and I don't know.
I have a question for, well, this is a comment to Marcus. Well, I think, well, people from outside the religion can't really fix a religion. People inside the religion have to be the ones to fix it.
Amen
I've
to that. No pun intended.
I'm I'm a former Catholic. I have zero power, will, or influence over what the Catholic Church does. Parishioners would have to do that on their own if they decided they wanted to do that. I would hope they would, but as far as, and now, as far as making people deny God may exist, well, that's not really what atheism is about. It's not about denying a God exists. It's by saying that insufficient evidence to warrant belief exists, and you can't make anybody believe or not believe anything.
And based on that lack of evidence, I would say it's safe to say that I deny God exists.
Yeah, well, that's true. But I mean, the thing is that if you look at this, Russia, during the Soviet period, most religions were tamped down, although not until, the not the Orthodox Church, not entirely. But as soon as the Soviet system went away, religion popped back up again. So it never went away. It was underground. So I reject the idea that you can make. That's why I think it's funny when I hear theists level the claim that we're trying to take away their religion. Even if you started rounding religious people up and treating them badly and denied them their services and everything, that wouldn't make it go away. So and I occasionally hear extreme atheists say crap like that, but nobody's serious. Nobody has any power to do anything about it. So,
I just want to say that I find I'm sure Marcus doesn't mean to be, but I mean the language in that, wouldn't it be easier to fix religion? I mean, what would that even look like?
yeah.
I mean, I'm not being facetious at all. I mean, because all the different religions have different problems, for one thing. And like you just correctly said, Joe, the only people that can fix it are the people who were in it. And if they were inclined to fix it, it would have happened 1,000 years ago. So,
Right. And basically what we see, religions are, in general, are better than they used to be for the most part. And the reason why is because society changed and those religions had to adapt in order to keep people showing up. If they still had, for instance, the Catholic Church had the same policies it had, at the time of the Inquisition, I think it would be a much smaller organization than it is today.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, but then there's the pedophile priest thing. So
right, because unfortunately, and why is that? Because society is still too touchy about putting pressure on the church. Because so we allow them to basically, when they have evidence and they know who these people are, and by law, like if you say we were teachers, and one of us knew that the other was stripping the little boys or the little girls, we would be required by law to turn that shit in. But for some reason we don't expect the same of priests, and we give them all this bullshit exemptions, and it's like we should start not only charging the priests who do it, but we should start charging the people who hide them, because that's actually conspiracy, and it's actually accomplished after the fact. These are crimes. These are like legal crimes. If we start holding them as account, if we stop having this touchy, like, well, that's religion. No, it's not. Raping little boys and little girls is not part of anybody's religion that anybody recognizes.
Right.
But it has been a feature of the Catholic Church pretty much since its inception.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. But it's not
That's
a tenet. It's not a tenet of the faith. So there's no excuse not to start arresting motherfuckers, and they have started to slowly recently. So maybe that will be the change that's necessary. But unfortunately, there's still too many parishioners that, instead of seeing seeing that for what it is, they see it as, oh, you're persecuting my religion. No, we're bringing justice to criminals. And if you could have turned out your criminals and you didn't, so now we have to do it.
Wait. I'm sorry. Lack of evidence doesn't work when you are the evidence.
I don't know what that means.
I am evidence that my parents fucked. No, not that a god exists, but that sexual reproduction in mammals is a thing that we've evolved to do. I am evidence that my parents fucked. I mean, at least once. And considering I've got 3 sisters and a brother, that's 5 times that I know of.
Yeah, I know we don't like to think of our parents as sexual beings, but we are the evidence that they did it at least enough times to create us.
I mean, that's what I'm evidence of. I am evidence that in this universe that doesn't have any kind of moral anything, an intellectual anything, that it's mostly just a void, that in that universe, on a small rock, in an average galaxy around a pretty minor star, on a rock, that intelligent life can flourish.
And see, and this is the thing. Yes, there's been pedophiles in every single type of job or group. The difference is when they aren't religious, we turn them in and arrest them. That's the difference. And we don't even like feel bad about it. Like we don't feel squeamish about arresting a teacher who's diddling the children. We just go and grab that shit and put them in jail, which is what we're supposed to do. But when it's religion, we're like, well, gee, I don't know, and we don't want to violate. No, fuck that. They broke the law. The people who hate them broke the law. Arrest them. We're not arresting them because they're religious people. We're arresting them because they diddled the children.
So, okay.
I want to address the other one as well, really quickly. So, Raven, go ahead and respond to Joe real quick.
No, I was going to respond to Marcus.
Okay, I was too, but I was going to do this next one. What fuck to make the universe? That's a fundamental misunderstanding. The universe wasn't made. The universe happened.
And there's no reason to think that the universe isn't something that's been around forever and ever and ever. People could talk about like the Big Bang and whether or not that happened, I guess, could be debatable, although the science is pretty well established, at least to a certain point after the Big Bang on. There are many who are going to say that, even before the Big Bang, that question of before the Big Bang doesn't make any sense because there was nothing before the Big Bang, because time and space came out of the Big Bang, didn't exist until the Big Bang. But there are others that disagree with that. And either way, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because before that, the universe as we know it wasn't here, so it doesn't matter.
Right. All we know is it's the whole problem of infinite regress. We know something had to be first, whatever that is. Whether that was a being or whether that was the universe itself, we don't know. And so here's the thing: anyone says, "Oh, you can't get something from nothing," that would include God as well. And so, because then God would have had to come from nothing. And if you say, well, God is different, that's called special pleading. So if God could exist forever, it's possible that the universe or existence itself could have existed forever. So,
and also about we were talking about before about priests, diddling kids, and about how it exists in all. There was a time where we didn't see children as thinking beings that had value and worth in themselves. And we saw them as property, and they were used in all kinds of horrible ways. And children were treated pretty universally, pretty badly all over the planet by adults. But over time, most of society kind of grew out of that. And we learned to actually value our children as things other than slaves. And that pretty much happened everywhere except the church.
I have confidence, just like Joe, that the Catholic Church is going to do some reforming of the priesthood, and it's not going to have as many kitty diddling, because kitty diddlers themselves they tend to gravitate towards jobs where there's not a lot of criticism of the person holding that position, and also they have pretty open access to things, and really, if you're a kitty diddler in this era right now, the job you want is Republican congressman. Especially in a district infected with QAnon conspiracy theories, you're good.
Which is ironic, since they're the ones going off about how we got to worry about this stuff, and they do nothing about the ones in their own midst.
Yeah, they're not going to talk about how Trump went to Epstein's Island.
I want to know why the outer circle wants to know about my penis.
They're not going to talk about how Trump had the Miss Teen USA pageant and was backstage looking at the contestants. They're not going to talk anything about that.
Because they don't really
Republican
care.
office holder, and you're good. Just get in one of those really rural districts, and you can just do as much kitty diddling as you wanted. They're never going to call you out on it.
Right. Yeah, I think outer circles should mind their own fucking business.
Yeah. I'm not sure why they want to talk about my penis.
And remember, outer circle, I have ops now, so don't fuck with me.
Well, one thing that amuses me about that, in a way, it's not actually humorous, but it's like when I was a body piercer back in the day, and people automatically feel entitled to say, you know, how many piercings have you got in your dick? And it's like, since when do you talk to strangers about their dick? You know, I mean, what's going on here? What's wrong with this conversation?
Unless you're planning on sucking it, you shouldn't be asking about it.
That's exactly my opinion as well. You know, unless you're interested in someone, you shouldn't be voicing an opinion.
Well, that's why anytime anyone's asked me like to do the whole, you know, guess, or do you think this person's gay or that person's gay? I'm like, I don't care about anybody else's sexuality unless they want to have sex with me. Then I might care. Well, I would care, but that'd be about it. It's the only time I care about anyone's bits or their sexuality is if they're interested, because, you know, I might be interested back depending on, you know, whatever the mood may strike me. So, but
you swinger, Joe.
But I mean, it's clear that the outer circle is curious. I think we can pretty much confirm that at this point. So.
Yeah. Now, Marcus, as far as special pleading goes, you know, that's my whole point. My point is, I'm not asserting that the universe existed forever. Again, I'm not even excluding the fact that there could be a God. But I'm saying is, I see no reason to, you know, I see evidence of the universe. I'm not seeing any evidence of a God, and all the things people have presented to me as evidence have failed miserably. That's not to say that somebody else won't come up with something that's better, but so far they haven't done that.
One of the most common things that people bring up as evidence is actually not evidence at all. It's the claim.
Right.
That's not evidence. That's the claim. You cannot use the question as evidence for the question.
Right. I myself am a hard atheist. I absolutely believe there is definitely not a God, or at least any God that anyone's described to me. And I've studied loads of different religious traditions, as well as talked to people for 35, 40 years about this shit. Right. So, however, being an atheist doesn't stop me from having all kinds of kooky beliefs, right? I mean, not at all. I got loads, and I won't bore you all with them, but I got loads, right? So, you know, I don't claim to be any more rational than a theist necessarily. I just have to think they're wrong when it's one subject, you know?
But see, the thing is, I'm not I won't say I'm a hard atheist. I would say I lean. If you ask me what I think is most probable, I would say it's most probable that there's not. Mostly because every other claim that we've had about gods, almost none of us believe any of those anymore. And they had just as much evidence of the ones that are still sticking around. So basically, we have a lot of evidence that human beings have made up a lot of gods for a variety of reasons, and over time, we've kind of wheedled them down to a few. So it's kind of like, you know, again, unless somebody got something better, and I'll go one further. So, you know, and I may have mentioned this before. So if I did, you can stop me. But last year, when Blitzen was, you know, spiraling down. And I've had all these religious people tell me that, you know, God performs miracles. And if you ask sincerely in your heart, that, you know, miracles will happen for you. So I said, okay, if there's any intelligent, powerful being, they don't even have to be a God, just any intelligent, powerful being that's apparently capable of reading my mind, which that's what I'm told they can do, repair one of Blitzen's kidneys. She only needs one to live. And that would actually provide incredible evidence, because we had medical scans of her kidneys. We knew they were damaged beyond repair. So if one of those suddenly regenerated and was functional again, that would be pretty fucking compelling evidence, at least to me. I would go, wow, you know, this is something that's medically impossible. And so maybe it's an alien from another planet. But hell, I'll worship that alien if it keep save my dog. I don't care.
Well,
So
I'll tell you this, Joe. I'll tell you this. So I don't believe that intelligent life from other planets has visited Earth, but there's actually more evidence for that than there
well,
is.
Well, exactly. Because the reason where it came up was I was watching. I don't watch Atheist Experience very much anymore, but every once in a while I do. And I saw an episode where people were questioning Matt Dillahunty and said, "Well, you always say that it would take evidence. Well, and I don't believe that you really would. I think your mind is closed. So you tell me what evidence would there be? Would you accept?" And it's a hard question to answer because basically almost anything you could come up with could have another answer. It could be a non-supernatural, non-God answer. So I started to think about it for myself, and this is again, Blitzen was spiraling down, and I said, okay, if there's this God out there and it wants me to know I exist, if I have my own little tiny miracle, a little tiny dog kidney, a little tiny dog with a little tiny kidney, if that kidney is regenerated, which we know at least to our current state of technology is medically impossible, that would be compelling enough for me that I would basically say there's probably something, and I would spend the rest of my life trying to find out what it is. So if that God's out there that some people believe in, and if it wanted me to know that it existed, it had the opportunity to do that, and that didn't do that. Blitzen died March 3rd of last year, and we didn't get any miracles. So either that being doesn't exist, or it wasn't interested in me knowing that it existed. In which case, then it's irrelevant because it means if it doesn't exist, it's irrelevant. If it doesn't want me to know about it, it's irrelevant. Which is why I gave up deism. I was only deist for a very short period of time because I realized deism is ridiculous. Because again, why care about a being that doesn't seem to give a shit about the rest of the universe?
So no non-God answer for consciousness yet. Number one, I don't think that's entirely true. Number two, so what if that's the case? And number three, I don't know is a perfectly fine answer.
Okay.
There's nothing wrong with saying I don't know. Just filling God into that gap, God of the gaps, right? Filling God into that gap is intellectually lazy. It's you don't want to think. Okay, well, you don't want to think. So fine, whatever. Don't think. Go off into the corner.
If I can build on
good, don't think.
I want to build on what Joe was saying there and say something incredibly woke and intersectional right now. And that is, I read the Bible and I found the God in that Bible to be highly vengeful and like upfront about it. Like he said he was vengeful, right? Why would that God unleash a plague on the United States where there's a whole bunch of people that believe in him and then have his own followers believe that they shouldn't get a vaccine and then have more of his followers die than anyone else? Why wouldn't he tell his own followers, hey, motherfuckers, go get that vaccine because I'm sending a plague to kill everybody else? Why is it that all the people that they don't like are the ones that are going to get the vaccine? All the people that they're hating on all the time because, they're confused about, love one another. Why? To me, it doesn't seem like it would give you any benefit to believe in that God if you're more likely to die from a plague. And
I don't know is ruining a lot of people in this country, I think. Well, okay, I think you're wrong.
Yeah, two things. One, say there's no non-God answer for consciousness. You know what? That's true. There's also no God answer for consciousness either, because that's just a claim. That's not an answer. I can make shit up because if you want to say, well, you can just pick a God. Okay, Krishna. Prove to me that Krishna is not the reason for consciousness. There's like a billion. There's like a billion Hindus that believe in Krishna.
Thor. I saw the movie.
Yeah.
Thor exists.
I actually know somebody who's a Hellenic theist. They actually believe in the Hellenic gods. They're rare, but they exist.
And I'm sorry, I don't know is ruining a lot of people in this country. I don't know is the basis of science. I don't know is the basis for everything that we do know. I don't know is what drives societies forward. I don't know is how you find answers.
Right.
So I don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
And actually, I would say it's just the opposite. Too many people who think they know because they spend 14 minutes on Google and they think that that whatever batshit bullshit that they pull up is equivalent to people who have been studying this stuff for decades. And no, so the problem is not that I don't know; it's people not being willing to say that they don't know, not being willing to accept that they don't know what the fuck they're talking about, and at least because I have a friend of mine says, well, sometimes you have to push back against experts. I'm like, yeah, you know who needs to do that? Other experts, because the rest of us don't know shit about whatever the topic is.
Yeah, I mean, it's totally fine to question experts, but if you're not an expert in the field, your opinions are nothing more than opinions, and nobody has a reason to give a shit about them.
Right.
So.
It's just like, and I've said this before. People think that the reason why people are so hostile these days is because we're all living in bubbles. I think it's the opposite. The problem. We've always lived in bubbles. We've always had certain topics were verboten or looked at don't talk about politics, religion, blah blah blah. But now on Facebook or whatever other thing you have, there are people who are constantly one bubble is running into another. And we're seeing people for who they really are, and so that's creating conflict.
People who are insecure about their ignorant beliefs love to push them on other people because they really don't want to have their beliefs challenged. And one of the things that they'll use to shoehorn their beliefs onto you is to say that I don't know is not an acceptable answer.
Right.
They'll try to shame you for being honest about not knowing. And they will try their hardest to say that that's not a tenable position when it is the most tenable position when you're being honest about
it. This one I think is hilarious. So yeah, people study religion longer than science, but you know what? Because science has actually built shit, and religion has never built anything.
But I was going to say that almost exactly. That okay, so we've been studying religions, right? We've had religions for thousands of years, and we've lived as a species, as societies for thousands of years without hot water, without knowing how to cure diseases, with people dying from fucking tooth problems, right? Science stopped all that. You can go into your kitchen right now, turn a little knob, and get hot water on demand. Why? Not because of God, because of science.
Right.
If you break your leg, you can have an ambulance come get you right now and take you to a hospital. Well, I mean, maybe not depending on where you are because of COVID, but you know what I mean. Well, right now, God didn't do that. Science did that.
Well, think about all the cathedrals and the churches. Built those? Science.
Science. Right? You're watching us right now on a device, which is basically the pinnacle of human knowledge. God didn't do that.
Right. A lot of scientists have believed over the years, and they didn't use their science to build anything.
Yeah. And like, so what? I mean, that means nothing. That and $1 gets you $1.
Well, here's the other thing too. Think about this. Okay, so the books of the Torah, so basically the Old Testament, those books are anywhere from like 2100 to like almost about 2600 years old. The books of the New Testament were written between like 70 CE and like 200 CE. So they're 1800 to 1950 years old. And even the people who believed in them, they've been studying them for all this time, and they still can't agree about what they fucking say. So you have a small collection of books that all the people who think that they're authoritative can't agree on it. But you know what? In chemistry, there's a few. There's things on the fringe that they disagree on. The things that we don't know very well. But all the stuff we've been studying for a long time in chemistry, there's consensus. And you know what? That shit works in physics, in geology, all these different sciences. Sciences converge toward a better and better answers. Religions diverge. Think about that. Religions diverge. At one point, there were like a couple different sects of Christians way back in the beginning, and now there's 1,000. Why? Not because they're converging, because they're diverging.
There's a planet in our solar system that is 100% inhabited by robots.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, there's helicopters on Mars. There's robots, and there's drones, and there's God didn't put them there. Science did. So I don't know. When God can do that, and it can be demonstrated, if we find out that there's robots on Venus that we didn't put there, I will be sufficiently impressed.
All right.
Yeah. I just wanted to say, I've been waiting for a minute to talk to that point to Marcus about, like some scientists or believers or whatever. I mean, that's besides the point. And but there's also scientists who were like very sort of spiritual without being believers, like Albert Einstein. And I posted this last week on my Facebook, and I just want to repeat it here. A human being is part of the whole called by us universe. We experience ourselves, our thoughts and feelings as something separate from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of consciousness. This delusion is a kind of prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and affection for a few persons nearest to us. Our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circle of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty. The true value of a human being is determined by the measure and the sense in which they have obtained liberation from the self. We shall require a substantially new manner of thinking if humanity is going to survive. Right? Spiritual as fuck, no mention of God.
Right. Yeah. Well, the other thing too, Marcus seems to think that religions are converging. No, not even close. Again, the Christian sects alone are diverging. They're not converging. They're diverging. Jewish, and same thing in Judaism, diverging, not converging, diverging. And then there's all the Eastern religions, which you probably know nothing about, which aren't even very similar. And they say all these different things, say things that are not inclusive. There are a lot of things that are mutually exclusive. They can't both be true. So that's not convergence. People like to think that. They say, oh, well, all religions say that we should get along. Yeah, maybe a little bit. And then they have a whole bunch of things about where they should wage war against one another too.
I mean, there's plenty of similarities between some of the major religions. I mean, that can't be denied. Things like misogyny, and slavery. I mean, the Bible, especially the Old Testament, is replete with examples of slavery and how to treat your slaves. And as much as I admire Eastern religion and Hindu texts a lot of it is there to support the caste system, which is a lesser form of slavery, but it's still servitude.
I mean, as an atheist, it's really attractive to take all of the ills of the world and pin it on religion, because so many of the world's religions do advocate for those things, and the worst of human activities and thoughts and values, the worst of them are embodied in the world's religions. So it's easy and attractive to point at the religions and say that they are the problem and the root of the world's evils. I mean, I've done it before. I mean, I've made videos saying exactly that. And I mean, a little older, a little wiser, I don't believe that anymore. But I mean, you can't deny it. I mean, you can't deny that the worst of humanity is embodied in its religions.
Yeah, well, I think this is hilarious. You talk to people, yes. So you know about every single world religion. The fact that you talk to a few people, that's called an anecdote. That's not that proves nothing.
I want to address something that is gone because Joe, I'm pretty sure it was you that blocked him.
Yeah.
Outer Circle. Curious. What is your obsession with my sex life? I mean, I'm utter. I mean, do you think that lesbians don't exist? I mean, I don't understand what it is your malfunction is.
Well, I mean, even if the question itself was legitimate, it's a severe lack of expression. And he's not like your best friend or anything. You know what I mean? It's like some stranger on the internet who said lots of horrible things in the past. So why would you open up to someone like that? It's a mystery,
I mean, and the thing is, and I warned him. I told him not to fuck around. Don't make this personal. Oh, see, Marcus, I just looked here. 45,000 denominations of Christians worldwide. Don't tell me that that's convergence.
But 4,999 of them are wrong.
Yeah. And they can't all be right. They can't all be right because again, they say things. There's a lot of things in common, to be fair, but there's a lot of things not in common. Christians have fought wars with other Christians over what it means to be a Christian. Okay, so
well, that happens right now culturally.
most Christians don't believe that Catholics are Christian,
Right.
which
That's
is like
what I'm
fucking mind-boggling.
Yeah, and so that's even worse. Saying there's 7 billion religions actually means that's less. That means you're saying every single person has their own religion, which isn't true. But even if it were true, that would actually make your case. That would be worse. That would destroy your case utterly.
There are 7 billion genders. So
there you go. But the thing is that I don't have a religion because religions have tenets and practices at minimum and a belief system.
Every religion I can think of has some kind of dietary restrictions and some kind of lifestyle restrictions regarding who or how you can mate, or I mean, they all do. And it's interesting to me, and that's because most of the major religions anyway are fucking ancient and come from a time that doesn't relate to this period of history whatsoever. And I find it boggling that people want to transpose ancient morality onto the modern world as if it's something to herald, when in fact, we struggled for centuries to get away from all those practices, like slavery, for example, and other stuff like that.
Well, and Marcus, you're saying it should be mended. Well, you tell us how. Where's your answer? I mean, it's very easy to throw spitballs at other people. What's your answer? You can just say, "Oh, it should get better." I agree. We should make the world better, but
But isn't the problem with that? Isn't the problem with that point of view? Is in itself is incompatible with religion, though. I mean, aren't the religions? Don't they claim that their holy text that describes who they are as religion? Don't they claim that came from God Himself? I mean, you can't, as a person, as a mere earthling, decide that you can mend religious belief if you are not the mouthpiece of God.
I don't know what your channel is, so I've never seen any of your videos. So putting it in your next video series doesn't tell me anything. Link your channel. And you say I'm looking at the wrong things. Like what? I mean, you're the one. You're making claims, and your claims are easily refutable by evidence. So if I'm looking at the wrong things, then maybe you're worried. Maybe you're saying things wrong and asking ridiculous questions and making ridiculous statements. And you should reword yourself in a way that's more accurate to the point you're trying to make. Communication is a two-way street, at least. It's not my fault that you ask ridiculous questions and make ridiculous claims that you can't support. And the thing is, as far as everyone going over their own path, well, I mean, actually, that's also antithetical to religions. That's not fixing religions. That's doing away with them. Which, by the way, I'm okay with getting rid of religions if people wanted to. I mean, I can't force them, and I don't want to force them because, again, I think that's disaster. But everyone going on their own path is actually the opposite. See, religions have strictures and they have requirements and they have things you're supposed to do and things you're not supposed to do. If everyone's doing their own thing, that's in no way a religion. Religions, by definition, are organized, which is funny when people say, I don't believe in organized religion. Well, all religions, by definition, are organized. If you don't have you may have religious practices without a religion, but you don't have a religion.
So maybe saying things wrong, but y'all on some burn religion tip. Okay, so if I say I don't believe in God, I don't believe in any God, because none of the religions put forward so far have been able to make a case regarding their particular deity that can pass any kind of actual scrutiny. That's not burning religion. That's just saying if you choose to believe it, then you choose to believe something that there's no evidence to believe. You don't even have any evidence that there's good reason to believe it. So that's all fine and good, though, if that's what you want to do. But that doesn't mean that I am on some kind of burn religion.
I mean, like 15 or 20 minutes ago, I said about how there he is. I said about how I've got all kinds of kooky spiritual beliefs, and that's true. The difference is I don't try to convince anybody else I'm right. You know what I mean? I mean, I don't care if you believe what I believe or not. Why should I? I know my beliefs are wacky. I think if you believed what I believe, you're gullible. You should experience the same shit I experienced to come to the place I've come to. That's the way I look at it. And so I really feel like whether someone's religious and when you say about people say they don't believe in organized religion, Joe, I think that person just hasn't heard of the word spiritual or whatever, because that's what they really mean. They're spiritual, but not religious, which encompasses a whole generation of people that I'm aware of. You know what I mean?
Right. See, the thing is, I want to know why Marcus, when on multiple occasions now, Marcus, I've said specifically that not only do I think you shouldn't try to take people's religions away, that it isn't even possible to do even if you wanted to. So right now, I'm going to demand that you apologize for lying about what my position.
Okay, I want to address this question from Marcus. And Joe, this is what we sort of talked about a little bit after hours a couple of weeks ago. Marcus says, what's the spirit call? Well, anybody who offers you a definite answer to that question definitely doesn't know the answer to that question. So that's what I've got to say about that. But if you're asking me, Marcus, if I believe there's like a ghosting machine, like I'm the host of a ghost or something like that. No, absolutely not. Do I believe that there's no such thing as a spiritual component to my life? No, I absolutely adamantly believe there is a spiritual component to my life. But to pretend that it's some kind of, I mean, if you just logically think about, what is a soul, right? Or a ghost even. If it has no substance, if it has no flavor, no temperature, no gender, no physical manifestation of any kind, in what sense can it be said to exist?
Right.
And if it exists in something that's beyond the senses,
so
then
like,
does it exist?
So like that, yes, spiritual.
Or how we perceive the universe. Go ahead.
Right. Spiritual. I mean, people say, oh, I'm spiritual. That doesn't mean that they believe in a spirit. Spiritual is a feeling. I mean, people describe a spiritual feeling when they're surrounded by nature, when they're watching a sunset, we're in the presence of a waterfall, and they get that, it's a feeling that you get. And I am right there. I'm there with that. I consider myself spiritual in that way. That's not religious. That doesn't mean you believe in a spirit.
Well, and also it's metaphorical, right? I mean, for a lot of people, when they say spiritual, it means that it feeds something innate in them. That's all.
So without going off on a crazy tangent, something similar, I posted a quote on Facebook from Captain America. And it was like early on in the movie, the German doctor who was like, doing the whole transition for Captain America said, people often forget that the first country the Nazis invaded was their own. And I thought that was a pretty good quote. And I posted it, and somebody actually took issue with it. And we ended up going on this back and forth where he was defending the National Socialist Party, saying that it wasn't an invasion, that, they fed the Germans and they built the infrastructure and blah, 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 blah.
They didn't do any of that.
And it's just like, that isn't the point. It doesn't matter. They could have done all that, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't change anything. As soon as they got their feet in the door of power, they did what they had to do to consolidate power. And once they had consolidated all of the power, the democratic government that existed before was gone. And at that point, they were an invading force that took away the rights and the freedoms of their country.
Well, and actually, I would argue they were an invading force beforehand, because the way the NASDP got in power was initially, by violence, intimidation, assassination, and basically.
Anyway.
Yeah. So don't ever fuck with a guy with ops, motherfucker.
Okay, so and that's the point, though. It's just like, and what I kept telling him was, it's not necessarily meant to be literal. I mean, there's a point that's being made, about, the Nazis, and about how that whole thing went down, and that people, victimize or not victimize, villainize the German people, but they were victims of the Nazis too, and that's the point of that. But no, the dude kept defending Nazis, and all in caps. I even said to him, "You're defending literal Nazis."
Yeah, I mean,
I was away for a few seconds on another screen, and I come back, and wow, it's just like, I didn't see that coming. Kazoom, how are you?
I'm doing all right. Yeah, no. Hey, how's it going? Yeah, no real complaints. Doing good.
And where do you come down on the whole conversation when it comes to spiritual, not religious thing? Because I saw you nodding your head there. And would you describe yourself in that way?
I don't know. I mean, I I think we're all part of a giant living thing. That's my kind of view. So, um, whether or not I'm a separate spirit, I don't know. I just know that, yeah, I think there's, as you said, anyone who says that they know the answer or they're definitive about it, yeah, they don't know.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
It's like the people who call themselves who label themselves, they even have it in their name. Oh, I'm a skeptic, and it's like, yeah, sure.
Yeah,
Anyway.
in fact, yeah, exactly. The people, in fact, I've found that the people who actually go out to call themselves a skeptic are some of the least skeptical people that I know, because they're skeptical about one or two things, and they're never skeptical about the things they already believe. And skepticism begins at home. You are no more skeptical, no more of a skeptic than you are about the things you believe yourself. But and the
It's
thing
like
is,
it's like it's also like the places that say, "Oh, we're about the truth. We're about finding the truth," and it's just like, yeah, same thing.
well, that's the reason why I get so angry when I see like there's ads on Facebook for a variety of things, and they'll have somebody say, "Well, I was skeptical about this product, but now I believe it because it really works." I'm like, that doesn't make you not a skeptic. If if you were applying skepticism to the product, and then the evidence for the product working was presented, then you're still a skeptic for saying that the product works. That's how skepticism fucking works. So, it's like, no, it's like you were dubious and now you're not dubious. And you could be dubious or not dubious for bad reasons, and that doesn't have any bearing on your skepticism whatsoever.
Yeah, I like what Kazum said about the living organism. I mean, it's something I've said, and I'm not the only one. Obviously, lots of people have said it, and I think it's one of the best ways to look at our situation as a species. That the Earth is a living organism, and that we are a cog in that wheel, and we're a pretty fucking broken cog in that wheel right
I
now.
was going to say, that's Gaia theory, isn't it? Gaia theory is that the Earth is an organism and the Earth has a spirit. And if Earth is an organism, then human beings are the cancer.
I mean, we move more things we move more things around the planet than anything else here. We're like the movers, and I don't know. I was going somewhere with that, but that's all right.
We're like the organelles in the cell.
So, I mean, there's the latest climate change report from the UN is out. I don't know if you guys what you've heard about it or what you've seen of it. It's not good news. Actually, it's not even bad news. It's very bad news. We are actually now they are saying that we are past the point of no return. That we cannot stop climate change at this point, but we can mitigate its effects. And I would argue that we've probably been there already for a while. So now that we're going to officially consider it that, fine, I guess. But like I said, I think we've been there for a while. It's going to affect people who have the least power over it. As Americans, we are going to fare better than a lot of folks, which is bad because, well, I mean, it's bad for them. But what's really bad is we are one of the driving forces behind the problem to fucking begin with, and just because of the nature of the planet and the way that the climate works and the way that the planet works, most of the brunt of this is going to fall on places that are nowhere near us.
Well, and it has fed a big part of the problem too. I remember seeing a global graph of temperatures a few years ago, and they were pointing out that everywhere in the U.S., everywhere in the world other than the U.S. was hotter than here. So it helps feed the idiots here that don't want to believe that it's happening. But of course, they don't travel, they don't go anywhere, they don't watch any real news. So they're like, well, they look outside, they go, oh, it's fine where I live. So it can't, who gives a fuck about the rest of the planet? That's their general attitude. And so they tend to deny it. And of course, because we'll fare better here, they'll continue to deny what's actually happening around them. I don't know if any of you people have ever seen the movie Eric the Viking. There's Tim Robbins and Terry Jones and a bunch of other people. And there's one scene where they go to Hy Brasil, and Hy Brasil existed, and the folklore is if blood ever touches Hy Brasil, it'll sink into the ocean. So somebody gets killed and blood hits the ground and it's sinking. And so the everyone's like, oh, it goes to the king, and they're like, hey, king, Hy Brasil is sinking, and it's Terry Jones. He's like, no, not happening. Can't happen here. It hasn't happened for 1,000 years. And meanwhile, they're going down, and he has a little thing. He's like, I know you all heard the rumors that Hy Brasil is sinking, but I want to tell you that this is totally unfounded and totally untrue. And while they're all going underwater, and he's like, blah, 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 blah. And that's how I feel about like the climate deniers. It's like, it's all happening. It's happening all around them. And they, like the people in Galveston Island, who they're getting this, the ocean is coming up through their basements, and they're trying to build a fucking wall. And while a seawall will help you with storm surge, it does nothing for groundwater, because that's how fucking groundwater works. If you're below sea level, a wall is not going to stop it. And when people have said to me, well, what about the Netherlands? I'm like, the Netherlands has a series of fucking pumps, you moron. That's what the windmills are for. They are pumps to pump the goddamn water out, because if you're below sea level, the sea is going to intrude, because that's how hydrodynamics works.
The amount of denial from people on the right of climate change and just about everything right now. I am seeing people on the right become more unhinged, more disconnected from reality than I've ever seen.
Can I interject there? Because how much do y'all think that has to do with foreign interference? Because we are very easily stoked. I mean, if there's one thing I've learned about my fellow countrymen, is we're pretty easily triggered.
I think a lot of this has to do with how when people move over from mainstream platforms to these alternative platforms, they get no pushback on those alternative platforms. So all they do is keep festering and getting worse and worse. And there's nothing to stop them from going from getting worse, from becoming extremists. There's just nothing. There's nothing.
We're being encouraged to become extremists by from what I can tell. It just seems to me kind of obvious that we are having some kind of cyber war right now that's affecting our culture.
I don't think so. I don't think that the unhinging of the right has anything to do with foreign interference. I think there's a profit motive to it. Corporations are making tons and tons of money because of deregulation, because of major tax cuts that the right wing has given them, and they don't want to give that up. There's that. Number two is there is a Isaac Asimov, right? There's a thread of anti-intellectualism that has run through the history of the United States from the very beginning. Blah 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 blah. Whatever that quote is. I think I did a pretty good job remembering off the top of my head. Anyway, he's absolutely right. That quote was pretty much dead on, and that anti-intellectualism is alive and well today. And if people who are in positions of power, who want to remain in power, can convince the uneducated or the dull-witted, like Curtis, that certain things are true, they will do that, and they will do whatever it takes to do that. And if that means defunding schools, if that means spreading false information, whatever it takes to do it, and that keeps money coming in from corporations that they're given tax cuts to help pay for their campaigns, where they spend more time scaring the shit out of the dim-witted to vote for them. It's a cycle. There's no foreign interference needed.
Well, there's also just the people that have found a way to take advantage of the stupid people and they just find a way to make money out of it. I mean, when you go to any of these channels that peddle this stuff, it's filled with ads for things like homeopathy, stupid supplements that don't really do anything.
Alex Jones is
also for survival kits, things like that, because they're saying, "Oh, look, end times, everyone," and they get everyone. It's people are making money. It's all for money. It's money, just like with mainstream media. Most of the media is out there to make money, and it's sad that there's nothing reining in. Like I wish mainstream media was more forced to just the way that they are. I mean, like there could, as we've talked about before, there is no center point between some things. Climate change is happening. Oh, but we need to show both sides. Well, there is no real both sides. One side is bullshit, and the other. Yeah, I'm rambling. Sorry.
But your point's a good. Your point's a good one, kids. Because you think about like prior to 1980-ish. News was a loss leader on the stations. There was something provided. It was not a profit center. They were just reporting information, and that's not to say there wasn't any yellow journalism, that there wasn't any right wing, left wing bias here and there. It happened, but it wasn't as big. But the thing is now, what they did, they didn't
fairness. The fairness doctrine,
right? The fairness doctrine was in, and so basically they didn't try to really generate it. But see now, I mean, newspaper. In fact, that's the irony. Newspapers were more the site that would do that, because newspapers were for profit, always trying to make profit. So they would tend to be more sensational. Now it's totally flipped. Now the newspapers that are left are the only ones that are really good, because their
survival depends on them telling the truth.
Right, exactly. So whereas the news media, the television media, and all the other online media, their thing is they want ratings, and what brings ratings is conflict. So I remember when Clinton was president, and there were the debates over the welfare reform were going on, and I read a story that was talking about how badly that was being covered, and what they were talking about is how the news media, the television and internet, to the extent the internet was around, were basically measuring the horse race. They were saying who's winning the argument, and they weren't giving you details about what was in the competing bills. So this thing said, okay, there were so many news articles on TV and on the internet, and they said, of the ones that were out there, like 85% of them only covered the horse race. Oh, the Democrats are winning the argument. Oh, the Republicans are winning the argument, and no one was presenting what the actual fucking arguments were. So how could you have an informed opinion other than tribalistic, because you had no idea what any of the bills actually said, and they weren't doing their job to tell you.
Getting rid of the fairness doctrine bred that entire attitude. I mean, it allowed Fox News to become a thing that exists in the world, sadly.
Well, another thing, though, it was 1996 when both Fox News and MSNBC came into existence, and it was at that point when news became about trying to compete with the other networks. Before then, CNN was actually pretty decent.
Once upon a time, when I was a radio DJ, this is the early 80s, there was lots more regulations on broadcasting than there is now. And among the many regulations that there used to be was you're saying about the news raven used to be a loss, a revenue non-generator, right? Or was it Joe that said that? Sorry.
Yeah,
Joe.
I said that, yeah.
All right. Anyway, the reason for that was primarily because, hard to find advertisers for news. That was one thing. But the actual other reason was that the broadcasters didn't really want to have news. But it was part of in order to get a broadcasting license, you had to dedicate a certain amount to public service announcements, a certain amount of minutes per day to news broadcasting. And you had to show some public interest other than merely entertainment.
Right.
I don't know exactly what regulations might have changed in that regard, but clearly some regulations have changed, because just the fact that Fox News exists as it does, when they're blatantly at this very moment, literally stoking rebellion and getting away with it. And how is that news?
Well, see, part of what changed is that when we went off the air, the broadcast frequencies, and we went to digital, that's where it changed, because what happened was the FCC regulated those bands, so both for radio and for television, and so we had the government had some leverage, because they basically said, hey, if you want to broadcast at this frequency where we gave you a license, there's an obligation that comes with that. Once we stop broadcasting over the air, what leverage does the government have other than passing another law? And of course, at that point, the conservatives aren't going to let any law pass that like makes businesses be accountable for their shit, so they can just get away with doing anything they want.
Well, I mean, another thing, though, I mean, when it comes to them having to cover news, before it was the main networks, they had to dedicate a certain period of time. It wasn't. It's once we had 24-hour news networks, and CNN was the first one. That's when things started to change, and like I said, it was in '96 when CNN had competition, and that's when things really turned to shit.
Well, see, what's the ironic thing to me, and I've been hearing them say this for years, is they'll say, when people complain about the lack of good coverage, they'll say, oh, well, it's a 24-hour news cycle. I'm like, right. We used to have news 2 to 3 hours a day. You'd get your dinner time news. You might get early morning news, and you get dinner time news, and you get your nighttime news, and that's it. You had 3 hours to cover everything for the entire day, and now you've got the entire day to cover everything, and we have worse coverage now. So it's such a bullshit argument.
Well, right. I mean, at the moment, sometimes I watch MSN, sometimes I watch CNN just to see what the differences are, and it's shockingly appalling how little differences are in terms of what stories are being covered. Considering this is a great big country, the narrowness of the focus, to me, they're clearly driving narratives, which is why I kind of understand why people are so skeptical of the media these days, because they're driving narratives. They're not necessarily covering all the stories out there, not by a mile. And that was made really abundantly clear to me when I went back to the UK in June and watched the British news, and they haven't abandoned what the news used to be like 25, 30 years ago. It's still kind of like that there now. And you think, oh, wow, I forgot the news was like this. They're covering stupid little stories about how they have these electric scooters in London, but electric scooters are banned on sidewalks and on the roads. So how come you can rent them on every corner in central London?
Another thing, they're good at debating too. Like if you watch a formal debate or of politicians or whatever, they know how to debate. They can talk about things that are pretty heated without yelling at each other.
Well, and that's one of the reasons why for quite a long time my primary news sources are NPR and BBC.
So, like, to address what Kazum was saying before about the whole thing about it becoming, competition and CNN changing everything. When CNN first hit the air, they weren't a hit. They struggled like hell for topics. It's 24-hour news, and there wasn't 24 hours worth of news to fill the time. They had a hard time with it, and then something magical happened.
OJ got chased.
No, before that, a little girl fell down a well. Baby Jessica and the entire country and then the world was focused on this well, and CNN covered it for every fucking minute for the entire time that whole drama played out, and the whole world got to see firemen pull this little girl out of the ground. And nothing after that was the same on television news.
And then the next thing, and that got them attention. But you know what? Then what propelled them into like superstardom? The Gulf War, because they were 24 hours, and they had guys in Baghdad when the attack started, when Desert Storm started, and so they broadcast live the first wave of the attack, and they were the only one that had that 4-wire link back to Jordan, so they could get
I was
the
in the
story
UK
out.
at the time, but my friend Berkeley said that CNN broadcast the beginning of the war live when it happened. Like, so they were, like you say, they were there, they were ready, they knew it was about to happen, and then boom.
Yeah.
And in the Iraq war, obviously 10 years later or whatever, 13 years later, whatever, it turned out to be 12 years. They were embedded. And that to me was like a serious lack of journalistic ethics, to embed yourself with the troops is you're going to have to show one side of it.
Right.
I mean, you're literally depending on these people to keep you alive. You're going to show them in the best possible light.
I understand that spending too much time on certain people in the chat can kind of really derail conversations. And I think we're doing a pretty good job today of actually using some of the stuff on the sidebar to really kind of throw around. But I do want to say that anytime anybody brings up Soros, I think it's important to let them know that that's anti-Semitic. If you're going to start talking about George Soros, number one, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. And number two, just bringing him up is pretty anti-Semitic. Because you're basically saying that the Jew is controlling an entire American political party because of his money.
Does it have to be associated with Jewishness? Does it? I mean, can't
Well,
someone?
George Soros. That's George Soros, and he's Jewish. I mean,
Yeah, that's the whole motivation behind why they do it.
Yeah. I mean, and they'll go on and they say all kinds of shit about George Soros, that he was helping the Nazis kill Jews during World War II. He was like 8 years old.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like,
I just know
He
that
must have been really talented at
people say
killing
this
them.
about people will talk about Bill Gates though too. They'll say a whole bunch of crazy things about Bill Gates too. Oh, well, it must be connected to Bill Gates. So that was the only reason why I was like, well, does it have to be associated with Jewishness, or could it just be anyone that has a lot of money?
There's an entire history behind the whole George Soros thing that goes back many, many decades. I mean, there's it's an anti-Semitic thing, and just bringing him up becomes it's anti-Semitic.
Okay.
And then also he the same Yahoo mentions communism. He apparently doesn't know what communism is, and he kind of proves that by later making a reference to Germany. Germany was, as Joe rightly said, Germany was fascist, not communist. So yeah, it's just
Well, what's really funny is I actually had people tell me that Germany tried to argue that Germany wasn't fascist. I'm like, no, they literally fucking called themselves that. They literally called themselves that. And by anyone who doesn't know, fascism as we know it was birthed in Italy. The fascist party was created in Italy.
I thought it was Spain.
No, Italy. No, see what happens now. The Spanish Revolution was the fascist won. But the fascist party in Italy was started like 1919. It's basically right at the very tail end of World War I. Excuse me.
There you go. You got it.
So
Well done.
yeah, thank you. So and actually, and literally the fascist, I forget what the name of the party. There was basically an Italian nationalist party that pre-existed it. That basically most of its membership became the fascist party, and the fascist party was literally founded by Mussolini. And so that was the birth of fascism. And then then both the Spanish and the Germans picked up on it, but they all called themselves fascists. So to argue that the Germans are communists is stupid in the extreme.
I want to know how come it's still not okay to just call the GOP fascists right now? Because I mean, Trump is beyond clear that he deliberately and overtly and in multiple ways tried to steal the election, and now has the audacity to say that Joe Biden has stolen the election. Well, that's been his whole shtick, obviously.
It is okay.
Huh?
It is okay to call him that. I do.
Yeah, me too.
I do, but I still get so much pushback of, oh, you go jump straight to fascism, blah 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 blah. I'm like, dude,
Well,
My response
my
to
whole
that
thing is, it's like, why? How come these people can't see it? I just don't understand.
to that is, I didn't jump anywhere. They're the ones that jumped to fascism.
Yeah. Well, also funny thing is, if you remember at the convention, the stage they used, that pattern is actually a pattern. But basically, the swastika obviously has negative connotations in our society. So neo-Nazis about 12 years ago adopted a different symbol as cover so they could identify one another without having to wear swastikas. And they used the same fucking symbol for the stage for the Republican convention. You can't tell me that. Was that?
That was 2 CPACs ago, and it's like a rune. It's like a sort of a diamond with the 2 tails going off.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so it's not even a question anymore. Because you can't tell me they didn't know that. Like no one in the room would have said, "Hey guys, don't you know?" And as I was arguing with somebody recently. Oh yeah, I had this. I think I might have mentioned I had this conversation with somebody down in Texas, who he's Republican and he doesn't understand why black people don't vote Republican anymore. And so we were talking about that, and I was like, he was basically saying, well, the Democrats were in the KKK. And I'm like, yeah, a long time ago. But I said, who do they vote for now, Steve? Who do they vote for now? David Duke votes for the same people you do. Maybe you should examine that. And he was like, it kind of hit him in the face because he's not this guy. He's kind of out there. He's not a fundamentalist, and he was kind of like. It struck him like, yeah, think about the company you keep, like that. It's not that everybody who's a neo-Nazi is wrong on everything all the time, but if they agree with you in principle on most things, you probably should stop and consider why that is.
Poor Steve just got outed.
And the thing is, I was like, they don't vote for Democrats. So if your argument is that the Democrats are still the KKK guys, then how come none of the KKK guys vote Democrat anymore? That's a question. Yeah, don't ask why black people don't vote Republican. Ask why the neo-Nazis and the KKK guys vote Republican, because that's why the black people don't vote there for that. That's one of the big reasons right there. We look at any group that hates us, and wherever they're voting for, we vote for the other guy. Because it's going to end badly for us.
That's bullshit, Tommy. That makes no sense. That's utterly incorrect.
I have to jump in before Joe does.
Right ahead, Paul.
Okay, because here's the thing. In the last 100 years, Dems cause created more wars, conflicts than pubs. All that money was so wasted, could have led and housed the entire planet 10 times over. Okay. No political party is above reproach or beyond criticism, of course. But every time Republicans get in and crash the economy, Democrats get in afterwards and fix it. That's just true.
Right.
That's just true. I mean, that's not hyperbole either.
No, it's demonstrable history.
Yeah. I mean, you can look that shit up. And so just from an economic standpoint, it is true that Democratic presidents have been in power during like World War II, for example. But that happened elsewhere and came to us. It didn't happen because of America, unlike every war after it that we've been involved in. But Democratic presidents and Republican presidents have got us embroiled in foreign conflicts, which I personally find abhorrent. One of the reasons that Jimmy Carter gets any respect from me at all is because he's the only president in my lifetime, and I'm 59, who never bombed another country. One president who only was president for one term, and that's it.
Well, here. Okay, go ahead, Mike.
I just think that Tommy intended for it to be pronounced pubes.
Well, here's the other. That's the strategy. And that's but actually, Curious said something right. That's you. I totally agree. Yay, Curious. All right. Hey, I give you shit, but when you say something right, see, this is the thing. It's not personal. You say something that's right. I'm gonna say, yay, Curious. You said something that's right, and I'm gonna put it up there. You say, yay, Curious. You said something right. All righty. Yay. See, when you behave right, you don't get kicked.
Okay. Having said that, I have to call bullshit, right? Because it's not personal. Joe, an angel just died somewhere.
So okay, fair enough.
Good.
But the thing is, for what Tommy's saying, and I know Tommy's just shit throwing, but here's the thing: I don't even have to get into like who started what war, even though I could and totally crush the point. But I don't even have to go there to win the point. When the Republicans are in charge, they don't do any of that. They don't feed and house anybody. They cut spending on that. So the idea that we could have done those things is false because they didn't even attempt to do it when they've had the chance to do so.
Okay, but Tommy's comment almost like it seems to ignore Ronald Reagan.
Oh, absolutely. But again, that's what I went. What did Reagan do when he cut the interior? He cut money, for housing.
But he bombed everybody. There were more, I think, military conflicts under Ronald Reagan than pretty much any other president.
Yeah, there's a list of them.
Well, if we go and we start working backward, so what are the Democrats? Okay, Libya. Okay, a conflict that we were involved in 2 weeks. Ooh, which again we didn't start. So there's
it's hard to argue at this point that any conflict in the world we didn't start in some form. Most of them
no, we did not start the civil war in Libya. We did not start the war in Libya. That was raging for years. And again, we also didn't start the Syrian conflict. And again, that happened under both Democratic and Republican presidents. The Iraq War, Afghanistan, that was under Republicans. Now Bill Clinton did attack Iraq, but he didn't have an all-out war. The Gulf War I was Bush. Grenada, Panama. Well, Panama was Bush. Bush the first. Grenada. We were in Lebanon. And the Contra, the Iran-Contra thing, all that was Reagan. Now, okay, Vietnam, that mostly happened under Democrats, although the underpinning started during Eisenhower. World War II, we got attacked. So, Korean War. Actually, we killed lots of Iraqis during the two wars with Iraq. About 500,000 at least.
Kazum, I remember in the 80s, before Matthew Perry was on Friends, he was in a show called Second Chance on Fox, and one of the characters that showed up because he was dead because of suicide bombing vest was Muammar Gaddafi. I also remember him being a DC Follies character because that was Reagan's fuckery that brought Muammar Gaddafi onto the world stage as being the evil fucker that he was. It was all a reaction to Reagan's policies that made Muammar Gaddafi into Mr. Evil, and he just was really good at flying under the radar for so many decades before he finally, we all know how it ended. But yeah, he was a pop culture devil, bigger than Saddam Hussein back in the 80s. And it was because of Reagan era politics.
Yeah, but some of why he was like a pop culture kind of comical. I mean, look at the man.
Yeah.
How did he, back in the day didn't he do like an interview with GQ or something? I mean, I don't know. I have some kind of recollection of him doing an interview with a Western magazine where they sort of painted him as a rebellious sort of Omar Sharif type leader, like some, yeah, I don't know. It was weird. He was
a big fan of Michael Jackson.
Huh?
It's really hard to demonize someone when they're a big fan of Michael Jackson and like to dress up like Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
Saddam Hussein was a huge Madonna fan.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot. Somalia, that was Bush the first. Yeah, and again, that was something that while I agreed with it in principle because of why we did it, but still, it was like the end of Bush's term. So he commits a bunch of troops and then he leaves office. Like, gee, thanks. Yeah,
that was in the lame duck period right after he lost the election.
Yeah.
He just wanted to straddle Clinton with problems straight off the bat. It's one of the most wicked political moves I've ever seen because it had really no national security interest to do it.
Exactly. I mean, basically, the main reason to do it was that we were giving all this aid to the people that was getting intercepted by the warlords. So basically, the moral thing to do then is actually you have two moral choices at that point. You either stop giving them money because you don't want to keep funding warlords, or you go in and knock the warlords over. And people, I'm willing to accept either argument as a good argument, as a good choice, because again, staying the fuck out of it is a good choice, and going in and knocking over the bad guys is a good choice to me.
So I don't see why people need to die to fix the economy.
Yeah, I don't understand. But
Well, I guess it's an Tommy is trying to say that I mean, wartime economies we end up so often it might be an argument.
Well, we don't. World War II, World War II, the wartime economy that big, but I mean, that's totally different
Yeah,
though. I
yeah.
mean, most of the world's economic structure was in the toilet. All of Europe, which was a manufacturing base for the planet, was utterly destroyed. The United States was the only country with enough resources and people and power in order to manufacture stuff that the entire world needed, and that's what created, this big behemoth, of a society that now is caving in under its own weight. I mean,
I'm not sure if I misunderstand Tommy or not, because I might agree with that statement. I mean, basically, a lot of the interventionist wars that have happened in the past 20 years, at least, if not 30 years. I mean, I'm just going to use the Iraq war with George Bush as an example, but I mean, the level of corruption with George Bush's cronies, who are all making money on that war, and continue, and all those people making money, that means Americans' jobs, selling weapons, blah blah blah, supplying the war, all that stuff. That was jobs. That must have helped our economy, because Americans were making that money over there. And it is sad, in my opinion, that we've made war into some sort of profitable enterprise.
I mean, here's the thing, though. Now, having the big military that we do profits certainly certain people and creates jobs, but it does not have the kind of benefit that Kazum is talking about anymore, because as Raven said, there was a long sustained effort, of economic production. We converted a lot of civilian production to wartime production, and of course, those companies weren't giving this stuff away for free. Ford Motor Company and everybody else who built stuff got paid, and this happened over a long period of time, which is funny because all the right wingers who are against Keynesian economy. World War II is the perfect example of Keynesian economy working, because literally the government just paid for everything for 7 years. And then at the end of that, we had this booming economy that continued on into the 60s.
Well, that was helped by the fact that almost every country in the world, or the civilized world, owed us money.
Right. Everyone owed us money. And as Raven said, a lot of shit was broken. So we were really the only place that could produce the kind of volumes of things that could happen. So we had built a huge infrastructure, and nobody else had much of anything left anymore. So yeah, we did very well. But as far as now, though, none of these conflicts last long enough. Even though the war with in Iraq and all that's been on for 20 years, but we're not producing large scale equipment. It's not like we're losing hundreds of tanks a week and we got to push these out.
You ever see the big giant on military? Michael's in know what I'm talking about. The big giant, big lumps in the ground, the big burrs in the ground, right? And the big metal doors, right? That's ammo that goes in there. They store ammo in those things. There's enough ammunition in those things left over from Vietnam. It's not even usable anymore. Like, we store and ridiculous immense amount of weapons and arms and ammo militarily that we will never ever use. Maybe in an all-out invasion, if the rest of the world decides that they're going to band together against us, that we may have to tap into some of this stuff. But whatever. I'm going to get into a spending rant. So,
well, see here, I want to address Robert Wallace, because he actually, it's a salient question, even though he asked it like a dick. But it is a salient question. So here's the difference. The problem with Trump, the reason why we're mad at Trump, it wasn't because there were the virus was spreading, is because the virus was spreading because his policy sucked ass. He basically was trying to, everyone keep going out, basically denying it was a problem and letting everything go back to normal, and obviously prematurely.
If Trump is the savior for doing the whole speeding up the process of making the vaccine, why won't you get the shot?
Well, that's the thing. It's right now.
Take
It's
a shot.
all the people like Robert who hate the left, who who are anti-vax, not even for the airy fairy crunchy granola bullshit leftist reasons, but all because it's the government or it's the liberals or I'm going to pwn the liberals by dying. Good luck with that. Yay. But to your point though, there are people on the left that want him to take more fierce action, which he's actually starting to, and he's basically trying to push. That's why he said the military. Hey, military, if you want to stay in the military, if you want to stay working for the government, you have to you want to come in the government building, you have to be vaccinated. So I think now, if you want to stay taking the test, that took too long. That should have happened months ago. That should have happened months ago.
Yeah,
So-
and then if Biden did actually do something to try to take care of this, people like Robert Wallace would be throwing a fit.
Right.
So 'cause the main thing that's causing this to be what the situation it is right now are all of the anti-vaxxers and people who think that the vaccine is some sort of a bioweapon or some shit.
That's right. And how
The Trump administration and Fox News created the environment for the Delta virus to even become a thing that's in the United States. Like the people, 99% or 98%, I guess, I'm probably more honest, of the people dying of COVID at this point are people who didn't get vaccinated. And the vast majority, like majorly, the vast majority of them, again, probably 98 or 99% of them are people who are Trump supporters or who are on the conservative side who refuse to get the vaccine because it's a political fucking statement. So they're dying of COVID. They're dying of the Delta variant in order to pay homage to their child god, Trump.
The other thing is a lot of them don't even I'm sorry. A lot of them don't even understand that in order to achieve herd immunity, we have to have a certain amount of people vaccinated.
70%.
And I think I've even seen Robert try to argue, well, it tries to deny that sort of thing, as if anyone who isn't vaccinated, the only person they're harming is themselves. And it's just like, no, it's everyone else too. Come on.
Yeah.
And so many people believing in that shit.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I mean, I can point to Trump policies, Robert, that directly made things worse. Can you please point to Biden policies which are making the pandemic worse? The fact that the pandemic is getting worse right now than it was 2 months ago is largely, obviously, the same as it was last summer under Trump. A lot of people just will not be contained in their summertime. This is their time. And as privileged and spoiled rotten as that is, that to me, it seems kind of observably true. Right. Some people just will not give up their comfortable life in the interest of public health,
Right.
and I'm one of them. I'm not a hypocrite. I'm one of them. I've been traveling, but I travel by car most of the time. Now that I'm getting vaccinated, though, I will travel by plane. But before
as of right now, as we speak, 3 houses away, is my sister. She's 2 years younger. She lives 3 houses away. She is in her room, locked in her room, and has been for a week, almost a week now, because last Sunday she was diagnosed with COVID. She refused to get the vaccine. COVID killed my father. COVID killed her father. And she still refused to get the vaccine because fucking whack jobs on the internet keep talking about microchips being put into the vaccines and they're going to use that to track you. And she believed it.
Right.
And now she's sick. And refuses to go to the hospital because she believes that the hospital can't do anything for her and that they will end up killing her.
Right. And it wasn't Biden that made Texas and Florida pass laws preventing school districts and towns from having their own mask mandates, things that we know will help slow the spread of the virus. So you want to go talk to DeSantis, go talk to fucking Perry.
Quite the opposite. He's the one mandating that federal workers get the vaccine.
Exactly.
Jobs.
So yeah, so I was happy to take that question, dumbass. I mean, that's what gets me. See, it's like they. This is how dumb they fucking are. It's like, well, you were mad at Trump because the virus was, the pandemic was going out of control, and now the pandemic's out of control. And you're not mad at Biden. It's like, no, we're mad at the policies that made that happen, not because they, it's so stupid.
Well, the thing is they have to defend their child God. They have to. I mean, it's. I'm familiar with Robert Wallace because of YouTube. He can fuck himself for all I care. I think anybody who brings up COVID, and for any reason, bringing it up in a way like that's conspiratorial or like it's a hoax or something being unfair to this president or that president, because they can go fuck themselves, because some of us have lost people really close. So go fuck yourself.
Well,
it isn't a fucking joke. It isn't a fucking game. Fuck you. Fuck yourself, Robert.
And the other reason why he can go fuck himself is because he believed the QAnon conspiracy that the Democrats were all pederasts from a fucking pederast who's now spending the rest of his life in jail. And even after finding out that the guy who told him that the Democrats were fucking children was himself fucking children, he still believes the shit. So you believe the words of a convicted pederast, you moron.
He's not in the audience anymore. I think he just came in, kicked over the anthill, and split.
He believed what's his face.
Yeah, Eagle Eye.
So on top of one layer on top of the blame Biden for how bad the virus is doing now, even though we had one chance at the beginning and now it's mutating because of the Republicans that it is festering in right now. On top of that, down the line, we're going to have people complain Biden was to blame for all of the inflation that we're about to experience. No. First off, the first relief packages were passed by Trump, right? The whole reason why we need this relief is because Trump fucked up. So Biden passing these laws that basically print more money, it's because of trying to ease the pain on everybody because Trump fucked up.
I want to address the inflation thing because I'm finally actually in a position where I can talk about it. Okay, so the inflation, everybody's like all freaking out that it's going to be inflation, right? Especially if this new infrastructure bill gets passed through budget reconciliation. Okay, so the problem with that thinking, why it's wrong, is this isn't a stimulus package. This isn't just throwing money at people and stimulating the economy in that way. It's not about the economy directly. It's about infrastructure, and it will create jobs. And those jobs are going to counteract any stimulus type effects that this reconciliation package would have. So you're not going to have inflation. You're going to have job creation. So it'll negate any of the inflationary effects. Will be negated by job creation.
Right.
I'd agree within its own bill, but the stimulus packages that we've already passed will have an effect on inflation.
Well, they already are.
And they are. But that's to be to be expected, and that would have been a hell of a lot worse on us if we didn't have that stimulus.
Well, and actually, I want to correct.
They're going to blame Biden.
Well, here's the other thing, though, too, is that, and I keep trying to point out to the people who keep bringing up inflation, is that first off, the inflation was actually caused when people actually went back, back to tried to go back to their normal lives. Demand for a lot of products went up dramatically. So you have a short-term effect. But however, I'm looking, like for instance, spot price on timber. Spot price on timber peaked in May at 225% of its baseline. We are now back down to it's the quote unquote inflation is 5.9%, which is more than it should be, but that's minimal. So basically, it's rolled back because now that production is ramping up, they're catching up with demand, and so price is falling.
So I mean, the economy, all things considered, a global pandemic, Trump. Being Trump and doing everything that he did, all those stimulus packages that Biden has thrown, we're actually in really good shape. All things considered, we're in better shape than most people I think had expected.
Yeah,
I mean there are problems, but it's nowhere near as bad as the doomsayers were saying.
Yeah. So. Now looking at spot price on steel. Now steel had a big jump in May, same as timber. Came back down. It was gone back up again, but it's actually now trending back down. So basically what ends up happening is you're getting slow, inflation tailing off. It's not gone, but it's tailing in the right direction. So it's basically, what did I say, Mike, a few months ago, that this was a transient situation. So that's starting to be borne out. It's just like, whenever the right wing always tries to stand against raising the minimum wage because they bring up inflation, which is ridiculous because, again, only about 10% of the people of the workforce is in that zone where they're affected by the minimum wage going up. And basically what we've seen historically is that you'll see a short-term rise of inflation, and it always rolls back. So it rolls up for 6 to 9 months, and then it rolls back over a similar period. So
the numbers,
it's never long term.
Two of the numbers that I saw them talk about were steel and gasoline, and both of those did rise, but both of them are coming back into alignment. So I mean, so there's your inflation, and it's not as bad as people were predicting, and it is coming to an end. And the new reconciliation bill should not, create any more problems because Green Machine said that depends on who controls that money. If the money goes to big corporations, they'll just give a little bang. But that's not the way that the infrastructure works. If you hire somebody to build a road, they can't just take the money and give you no bang for your buck. They still have to build the road, which means they have to hire people, and those are the jobs that are created. Actual physical things are going to manifest from that money. It has to, because that's the whole point of it. It isn't a tax break. It isn't a giveaway. It's somebody has to be hired to create physical things in reality. And that is going to mean that there's going to be a boost to the local economies, to wherever the projects are being done, because people are going to be working, and then those people are going to be spending that money. So
and now I'm looking at a spot price on oil. Now oil, part of what this quote unquote inflation on oil, it's illusory, because what happens is everyone stopped driving last year because basically we started having shelter in place in March. Lockdowns happened further afterward in certain places. So what ended up happening is no one's driving, so the price plummeted because the people who produce oil can't afford to stop producing. They have to keep putting oil out there. So the price plummeted. So it's basically rebounded. It's only slightly where it was before everything started.
Okay, so Michael wanted to say
can
something.
Take a look at the median house price, because I know that's one thing that is a silo for this inflation.
But that's also
house price year after year going up like 20% in most metro areas.
But that's also an illusion, though. At least it is here. Home prices had skyrocketed here, and now they're starting to level off. And that's because of COVID.
Right. And in big measure,
that's fake. That's not real.
In big measure, because of the moratorium on evictions, which is it's kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you don't have the moratorium on evictions, then you have millions of homeless people, and that's going to have a huge long-term crash on the economy. Versus
there's a demand. There's a demand for homes, so there is a demand, and that's people moving out of the cities. But that isn't happening at the rate that it was happening 6 months ago. That's pretty much had come to a stop almost. So the prices on homes are going to start coming back into line to where they should be.
Yeah.
The house next door to me,
totally depending where you live, though. I mean, really.
Well, I mean, there are things happening in some places of the country that to me is just fucking crazy pants. Like there's private companies buying up houses. That doesn't happen here.
Well, and that's the thing. And see, this is another transient situation, because what's happening is this is the problem of any bubble. Bubbles happen because something goes up, whatever the commodity was, whatever the service, whatever the thing is that people are buying into, whether it's technology or whatever. They see that go up and they go, I want in. I want to make money. Everyone who invested in that's making money. I want to make money too. And they jump in, and that increases the demand. The problem is, in a lot of these cases, they're jumping in after the price of that thing has outstripped the value of that thing. So then the housing prices go up way past the real inherent value of those houses, and at some point it's going to stop, and all the people at the tail end of that are all going to lose their shirt.
Okay, so here's the thing that's happening though. Here's the thing that there are areas of the country And I think it's happening a lot where Michael is. Homes are being bought up by big giant companies, and then they're renting them out. That's crazy pants. That's bizarre. I've never heard of that until recently. And like I
doing
said, it's not
credit checks
happening.
on people to see if they will be good renters, and then renting the homes to them that they prevented them from being able to buy by snatching up all the available homes.
That's crazy.
Well,
I mean,
that sums it right up.
So
I have no idea where. I mean, other than by you, I don't know where else it's happening.
I'm in vast disagreement with Joe here about the effects of inflation still ongoing. And what I'm hearing is, in any measurable way that I'm bringing up, it is fake or transient. So why wouldn't we always just keep on printing a third of these dollars in circulation every year if it never has any effect? Where did the effect happen at all, Joe? Was there absolutely none?
Because this inflation is not based on any actual. These are transient conditions, very in large part caused by COVID. Now, here's something that's not related to COVID, but I'll give you an example of what happened. Okay, remember when GameStop was going through the roof, right?
Right.
And a lot of people were like, "Oh, we're sticking it to the man. We're doing this. We're doing that." And a lot of people jumped in. A lot of people bought at $400, $500, $600. It's like last I looked, like a week or two ago, it was like $3 something. So it was way down. So so this is that. I wish I could remember the exact thing, but it was like basically it's unwarranted exuberance, and that's not the exact term, but basically what ends up happening, people jump on and they say, "Hey, we want to make out because this thing's going through the roof. I want to make money." So they go and buy GameStop. And of course, GameStop was not going up for any really fundamentally good reason. So at some point, it petered out, it lost steam, and the bubble hasn't completely burst, but it did slide back quite a lot. Everyone who paid $300, $400, $500, $600 probably lost their shirt. We know there are people out there saying, "Hey, it's not fair that I lost a shit ton of money buying a fucking worthless stock." But that's how it works. Right. The same thing is as soon as that moratorium, at some point, they're going to have to give up the moratorium on evictions. It can't go on forever. So once that happens, then the demand on housing is going to change, because a lot of people are going to get kicked out of their place. Anyone who is still not in a situation to work out a deal with their landlord to pay off, they're going to get evicted. And now there's going to be a lot of open places, and the demand for stuff is going to go down, and the prices are going to break. And then that's now it's going to have a big negative effect, no doubt. But I'm not saying that there's no negative. That's the thing. Saying that it's based on bullshit doesn't mean there's not going to be any negative impact, but it's not the long-term effect of long-term bad inflation. It's not the same thing.
Right. It's not like this is inflation that's caused by the money that's being spent by the Biden administration or from Trump. This is an issue that's being caused by COVID directly.
Right. See, when you have long-term inflation, that kills economic growth. This is not growth-killing inflation. This is transient bullshit inflation. It's still going to hurt people. No, don't get me wrong. But this is not growth-killing inflation. That's why I'm not worried, because you can actually grow your economy out of this in the short.
People are going to get hurt. But like the side effect, and this is okay. The companies that are buying up these houses, and I've heard Michael talk about this. I've seen people talk about it on Facebook. And like I said, so that doesn't happen around here. So it sounded like this whole alien thing. But apparently it is happening in places. Now, when the moratorium on evictions ends, there are going to be a lot of people that are going to lose their dwelling. And they're not going to be able to buy a house because they've been priced out of the market, because of these companies that are buying up the homes to sell them at a rate that's higher than what the normal rental value is, right, in order to make a profit. I don't see how this ends good for anybody in an area where that's happening, for anybody in that area, even for homeowners. I don't see how this ends good for them, because this sounds like a housing crash is coming, at least regionally, for wherever this is happening. So there's going to be a lot of people who are stuck with houses they can't get rid of.
Fingers.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of people stuck with houses that they can't get rid of. There's going to be a lot of people that are going to be have no place to live because they can't afford the rent and they can't afford a mortgage. There's going to be a lot of empty houses that are going to be. I mean, this is going to end ugly for a lot of people in places where like Paul and Michael live. And that's not an inflation thing. I mean, that this is a whole separate. This is a housing bubble thing. That is a regional or local bubble, and I don't have a fucking clue what to tell you, Michael.
Right, right. Well, that's the thing. Like when the tech bubble happened, the tech bubble happened. It didn't happen because of inflation. The tech bubble
Right.
happened was that exuberance. Hey, everyone's making money in tech. The internet's blowing up. There's tons of money to be made. I want to make money. And if you got in early or even in the middle, you probably did fine. But you got in at the tail end, you got fucked.
So
Yeah.
what you're saying to me is there's the transient COVID effects right now in the economy, and that printing a third of the economy over again and putting out a stimulus has so far not shown up as any effect that you
Not
can say is
the housing market thing that you're talking about. No, that's because why would it? Well, like that money is going to people who are already living in homes. They have addresses, right? There's a moratorium protecting people. Different banks, as I know, we never took them up on it, but the bank that we have our mortgage with has several times said, "Hey, if you're having a problem paying your mortgage because of COVID, talk to us. We can help you out and push payments back and everything." We haven't taken them up on it because we didn't need it. But there are a lot of things that are being done out there to help people that have nothing to do with money that's being printed by the government or allocated by the government. So I don't. What you're saying is that
I still find myself in disbelief because you're saying that no sector that I've mentioned so far.
Well, I don't know about other things. I know the housing. That's
That putting that many trillions of dollars and just out of thin air didn't affect anything. Why don't we just do that every year? If the effects are going to be spread out so long term,
We
then
do.
What we do.
We borrow like over $1 trillion a year. What are you talking about? It happens all the time.
Yeah.
We do this every year, Michael.
I mean, yeah. I mean, there have been inflationary effects, but because it was money that was spent on stimulus at a time when nobody was working, right? And now, what is the unemployment rate now? It's like, it's pretty low. I mean, there are places that are struggling to. I mean, the fucking Dunkin' Donuts by me can't make a sandwich in the morning because they're understaffed.
I honestly say I have never seen more help wanted and staff vacancy signs at any point in my adult life. And back when I was a young man in the 80s, I used to see them a lot back then, but even then wasn't like it is now. I mean, every store and restaurant seems to have them. So retail and hospitality, definitely anyway, there's a lot of jobs going.
It's currently 5.4%.
I thought it was 5.9, but okay. Yeah. So
yeah. Well, it went down. The July rate went down 0.5%. So you were right. It was 5.9. It's actually gone down 0.5%. And historically, we're not quite at a historical low, so we're actually getting there. So here's the other thing too, as far as what's happened in COVID. It obviously created a lot of disruption. A lot of businesses went out, and that's very sad. But when businesses go out of business, it's just like what's going to happen with the housing market. It creates new opportunities. So my company basically, I was able to build my company during the 2008-2009 financial crisis. I actually depended on it because basically, I'm coming out there. Originally, I was just myself. And now, normally, if in a good economy, very few companies are going to look at like just one guy and say, "Yeah, we're going to put all of our automation needs and maintenance and all that in the hands of one dude and depend on one dude," especially morbidly obese guy who could keel over and have a heart attack tomorrow. So, but because of the financial crisis, everybody was broke and they weren't doing new projects. Everyone was like, "Save my shit, get the duct tape and baling wiring, keep my shit running because I can't afford to replace it. I can't afford to have it break." So they were willing to look at a guy like me, and I started off with companies that I'd known from before, but they were willing to give me a shot because I was cheaper, I was faster, and they were willing to take a risk because they were all broke. So that created an opportunity for me that would not have existed in a good economy. And then I got established during a bad economy so that when the economy got better, my business was able to grow.
And like we said before, though, that there were inflationary impacts from the money that they printed and they sent out there, and there's going to be waves of them again. And as because there's still the child tax credit checks that go out every month, and there's going to be waves and bubbles from that. But as far as like the widespread thing, we needed to get the country moving, and the only way to get the country moving was to invest money into it. They did that. People were able to save their shit. People were able to go back to work. People were able to do things that they were struggling to do before. When you're creating jobs, when people are able to work when they weren't before because of money that was invested, that's not going to cause as much of inflation as it would if you were just dumping money into the system and walking away. Something came out of it.
Yeah, and you know how you can tell when you're getting long-term inflation that's going to start affecting things in a bad way, in a negative way. Prime rate goes up, interest rates go up, because what happens is the banks now have to hedge, because if they loan out at a low rate, if they're not rated, if their loan rates aren't significantly higher than the real rate of inflation, they're losing money by loaning you money.
Okay,
So
Tommy,
instead, people right now are losing money if they save money, because inflation outpaces the interest that they would be earning on their savings account.
Well, right. Your savings account is a terrible place to put your money right now, because you're actually losing money. And that's been the case for quite a long time. When I was a kid, I remember, Paul probably remembers this. Maybe Raven does. I remember I put passbook savings was like 5% when I was like, in the early 80s, and that was kind of sweet, 5%. And then it went down. I mean, now it's like, less than 1%. For passbook savings, it's not, so having a passbook savings is really a dumb way to keep money unless you have no other options. I mean, you may not if you obviously have no other choices, then you got to do it. It's not dumb if you have no choice, but if you have a choice, passbook savings is fucking stupid.
So I want to address Tommy real quick. Unemployment number is a big lie. Those numbers are not right. It's more like 17%. Actually, it's probably higher than 17%.
Yeah.
The unemployment number is always a bit of a mirage. It's always a bit of nonsense. People who are no longer like me, I am not at all part of the workforce at all. Have not been for a decade. I am not accounted for in those numbers. So there are
about where we are, and if people decided, if we're in a pandemic, I might as well just go to school because jobs are fucked. So I'll just go to whatever school that accepts me,
Right.
and take myself out of the workforce for a little while, take a student loan to live off of. Think about how many people right now would be in their third semester of whatever program they're in.
Right.
They'll be back after their 4-year degree is done.
Right. Right. And that's actually a good thing. No, I'm looking at, so here's what Tommy's getting at. So workforce participation right now is at 61.4%. That's as of February. I'm not sure.
But he's also saying that unemployment benefits are twice the normal pay, which just isn't true.
Right.
And that's nonsense.
Right. The thing about workforce participation, look, at its highest, I was looking into this. The highest workforce participation we had in the last like 25 years was 66%, and our historic high is 67.4%. So that means that we're off what 5.5% from historic levels, and it's and so in an economic recovery, we should see that come back up to about 63%. But again, part of this is again because a lot of businesses closed down, so there's not work to be had for them, and there are people who have dropped out in part because of COVID. So
I also wanted to say about the no one is going back to work because unemployment benefits are twice their normal pay. To whatever degree that's true, that's actually a good thing anyway. I mean, if you are making more money while you're not working than you were in your previous job that you were working in, you should be using this time that you're not working to find a job that pays better than unemployment.
Right. And the idea
you regress to a worse paying job.
Right.
If you have the opportunity to look for better work and advance yourself, that's a good thing.
And unemployment is only X number of weeks.
Right.
You don't get that money forever. So if you're not looking for a job or doing something in order to get a better paying job, that's going to run out anyway. So that's
the thing. And in some cases, the people getting that $300, that's the only money they're getting because their regular benefits have run out. Here's also, now granted, I know the number is different in different states. In New Jersey, the maximum unemployment benefit is $713 a week. So while $300 extra is nice, I'll tell you what, you're $1,000 a week in New Jersey. That's, and remember, you still get taxed on it. Yeah, that's not, you're not living well anywhere in New Jersey on $50,000. So that's not keeping too many people home. I'll tell you that much. Also, as far as your unemployment benefit, that's 713. That's maximum. You had to be making substantially more than that to be able to get 713. If you were working a minimum wage job, the most you can get is 60% of your average weekly pay before you went unemployed. 60%. So that means, so if you were making $200 and $300 a week, now you're getting 180. So yeah, so if $300, hey, if that's more than you were getting before, good, because you needed that.
Yeah. So Target started offering free tuition, but I mean McDonald's has offered tuition reimbursement to its employees for decades. I worked I worked in retail pretty much all my adult life from the time I was 16 years old, and almost everywhere I've ever worked, they offered tuition payment or tuition reimbursement. There are things that you have to do to qualify for it. And once you get it, there are things that you have to do to maintain it. Because if you don't get passing grades as far as the company is concerned, you're losing that benefit. But that's not something new, and that's something that's always been out there.
Tommy, this with the exception of the people who are getting the child tax credit, the stimulus were one-time payments, so that's not correct. Now, if you talk about the $300 a week thing, well, again, a lot of red states, they canceled the $300, so their employees are getting fucked.
Yeah, and a lot of people didn't get stimulus checks at all.
Right. Not everybody qualified.
I got nothing. I got nothing. So,
right.
And I'm okay with that.
Yeah. So I mean, it's this idea that, and basically, and they have studied this, and the $300 is not having the impact that you think it is. It's not keeping, maybe in the margins, keeping a few people home, but it's not keeping that many people home. It's just it's $300.
It's $300.
And like I said, here in New Jersey, $300 a week, you can't pay to stand in the closet for $300 a week.
$300 a week. Wow.
I'm sorry. If the richest country on the face of the earth in all of history can't afford to give a few people $300, we got real fucking problems.
I agree.
Well, and that's really what it comes down to. I mean, this is the thing that I try to impress upon people, is that when you look at economic growth in the United States over the last 50 years, there's been significant growth, but the buying power of people in the lower half of the economy, it's been flat. So
it's shrinking,
and in net effect is shrinking, right? Because if the overall economy is going up and you're staying flat, you're actually falling behind. Right. So your buying power has gone down dramatically. And why is that? Because we've allowed the people at the top to keep a bigger portion of the pie. So that's what, because people don't seem to understand percentages. It's like if people kept the same percentage that they had kept before, the people on the bottom will be making more money, and the people at the top would still be making money. In fact, they might even be making more, because we have a consumer-driven economy. Like 80% of our economy is consumer-driven. So if the people who are on the working class and the middle class, who are basically the spending classes, because they spend most of their money, there would be more money pumping through the economy, because capitalism depends on the free flow of money, the free exchange of money. And if money's not being exchanged, there's no growth.
I think we should move away from a consumer-based economy and build pyramids.
Well, Trump's wall is kind of one of those pyramids, right?
I was going to say a triangular-based economy, but pyramids aren't triangles, so
yeah,
they're pyramids.
Yeah. I mean, it's. Well, I see it funny. I looked at
my. Looks confused. Wait, Agent of Doubt looks confused for a second. A triangle has 3 sides. A pyramid has 4.
Right, a pyramid has 4 triangles and a square base. So it itself not a triangle.
Yeah, there's something that is a triangle on all 4 sides, but that's not a pyramid.
Correct.
I can't remember what that shape is called right this second, but I know it has a name.
Well, the 4. Well, the D4? 4. Yeah, D4. Yeah. I'll look up the name of that. It's a regular polygon.
Yeah, and it's one of the what do they call it? There's certain shapes.
Aristotelian solids.
There's certain shapes like a cube and that pyramid that's not a pyramid, and a couple of other shapes that are, they all touch a circle in this equidistant places.
Tetrahedron.
Yeah, tetrahedrons do that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a tetrahedron. So
there's a name for those types of shapes. I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah, Aristotelian solids.
Okay. Yeah.
Or you could call them. I mean, polyhedron in general, but polyhedrons don't have to be regular.
Well, that's right, and they don't have to, like, what I'm talking about is, like, if you had a sphere,
What have I done?
there's certain shapes that will touch the same, that are in the same relationship to each other on a sphere, and those shapes have a particular name. I can't remember what it's called though.
What have I done? What did I start here?
Are we about to read Star Wars lines?
I don't know. Anything could happen. This is the Breakfast Club.
Anything can happen. Yeah.
I mean, you could call them regular polygons. But yeah, that's right. Platonic, not Aristotelian. Platonic.
That's it.
solids.
Platonic. That's it. Platonic
Solids.
shapes. That's what I was looking for. Yeah.
Platonic solids. I thought it was Aristotle. I was close. Plato versus Aristotle. I was close. But yeah, or regular polygons. But yeah, that's basically it. So it's a tetrahedron would be a better definition of a regular triangle, because it's all three sided faces on all faces.
Hmm.
Well, you have us arguing geometry now.
I know, right? We haven't covered geometry before. It's about time.
Hey,
I have a feeling like this is leading up to us all needing to have one of those experiences where we're going to see fractals.
Well, I mean, me and Kazoom talked about that when we had our 2-person Breakfast Club way back about a year and a bit ago. And we mentioned about, I think we mentioned about sacred geometry as well. Are anybody else on the panel familiar with the concept of sacred geometry?
I've heard.
No,
of
but
it.
I'm actually more interested in your memory. Like your recall is absolutely fascinating. So Michael said what he said, and like that, you recalled a year-old conversation with Kazoom.
Yeah, sure. Shit matters to me, so I remember it.
That's
How
fantastic.
my life works.
Paying attention.
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
Well, it's
have
like last week, Raven, I told you that my favorite 2 videos of yours were some obscure shit that you did like 11 or 12 years ago that I've only seen twice. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
In the background, I've been looking up what was the pyramid, the triangle called Rubik's cube thing called, and it was called the Pyraminx.
Yeah. So Deep Ashtray. Yes, I do have the angles. When I was in high school, I took geometry in my sophomore year, and they moved me up to the next. There was multiple tiers, and they moved me up to the top tier class because I was getting bored, and I was actually answering too many questions. And
was that trigonometry? Did you take trigonometry in high school?
I did. Geometry and trigonometry and algebra and calculus 1 and. But yeah, so they actually bumped me up a class in geometry because I was bored.
I was such a overconfident, cocky, ambitious, I don't know what, when I was in high school. I don't really know the right word for what I was like, but all the way through elementary school and junior high, I got straight A's, and I thought the school was bullshit, right? So I didn't try very hard anymore. And then I got to high school, and it was actually harder. And I was kind of surprised by that. So I ended up, for my elective classes, taking lots of classes that I consider to be pretty easy, or not necessarily easy, but conquerable. So you had to take a certain amount of science classes to get your eventual high school diploma. I think you had to have 2 solid years of sciences, but you could choose your sciences. So I chose ones like meteorology and geology, because I'm interested in it, sure. But man, I wasn't going to subject myself to physics or chemistry or biology. You've got to be kidding. Leave that for the smart kids, right? I mean, I was smart, but not that smart. You know what I mean? And I sort of took a lot of electives thinking I'll just skate my way through high school and everything will be fine. But thanks to certain bad life choices, as well as trouble at home when I was in high school and everything like that. I didn't graduate on time. I was 5 credits short, which is one semester of one class short. And the irony of that is the only time I ever got an F in high school was this class that was called comparative government, where we studied communism, fascism, social democracy, Western liberal democracy, blah, 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 all this different kind of stuff. And I actually learned more in that class than I learned in any other class in high school, but I still got an F on it because the way I skated through high school was most of my classes had a grading structure where at least 50% of your grade was the final test. And I would always ace the final test. And then the rest of your grade would be homework. And I would always just do my homework at school. And if I couldn't finish it, I'd turn it in incomplete and get a poor grade on it. But that plus 50% is an A. And you usually get like a B or a C or whatever. But with my comparative government class, it was like 10% was the final test and 90% was the homework. So there was nothing for it. And I tried to do the homework, but I also was so arrogant back in those days. I'm like, I am not doing work after school in my house. I'll do it during recess, or I'll do it at school, or maybe I'll do it while the teacher's talking, which you're not supposed to do, of course. But I just refused to do. I was so arrogant. I just refused to take homework home and do it at home because that's my time. God damn it. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Oh no, I understand that because I didn't really do homework, and I did the same thing. I did homework in school. See, the thing is that didn't catch up to me in high school though. I made top 10% without really trying. But it was when I went to college, and it got worse because my first semester freshman year, I fucked off and partied all semester, and I still got a 3.1 GPA the first semester. So again, not really trying really hard, and I did well. And then the second semester it started getting harder, and then I was like, oh, I got to work for this shit. And it was hard because I hadn't developed those skills to work hard because I had never had to before. So that was kind of difficult, but I made it through.
What were you like in high school, Kazoom?
I'll be right back.
I don't know. I didn't do that. I was so disconnected. I would pass tests and such by memorizing names and dates, not having much connection with what it actually meant in contrast to life. It just, okay, I'll memorize these things. I did okay. I did really good in music. I went it, did choir and went advanced there. I did really well there, but no, in regular classes, I was so disconnected. I didn't know what I was learning. So I think there were some classes I passed by the skin of my teeth, because I just didn't understand. I was a very disconnected person.
I think I would have described myself as disconnected while I was going through high school for sure. I had like one friend, well, maybe two friends at high school, and the rest of my friends I had in a different town at work. And it was really funny because when I was in high school, like I was really, really super scrawny. All right. And that plus the fact that my teeth are fucked up and I'm just a bit weird, it meant that girls didn't really like to talk to me very much. Right. And that was a real bummer for me. And then I got my job at the roller disco in the next town over. And I was like the most popular dude there with all the girls there. And I didn't know how to handle the attention because at my school, girls would barely talk to me. And then I go to work and all of a sudden girls are skating up to me going, here's my phone number. Let's go out. It's a bit of a culture shock.
Yeah. I was kind of like, I don't know, closest. I was kind of like Napoleon Dynamite to some degree, except that the only thing that instead of being on some of the geeky, nerdy stuff, I was the musician instead. So, right. But as far as how I probably reacted to people, yeah, I was kind of like Napoleon Dynamite.
I want to see the Kazoom movie then, and not in Kazoom Dynamite or whatever. That'd be good. I don't know what happened to Joe. I'm going to have to sign off pretty soon, though. But I'm glad we didn't get too deep into the deep this week. But we did, but we didn't, if you know what I mean. It could have got worse. I'm going to mention in a whimsical way. I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole, at least myself. But like, so Michael, you were warning us for weeks about Reinstatement Day, which was yesterday, and do you monitor this stuff, right? What are they saying now? I mean, how come it didn't happen? What's the excuse? I want to know what the excuse is. What's the official excuse?
The funny thing about it is Mike Lindell, my favorite pillow guy. So he had this giant event that he was going to have. It was like he rented a stage and everything, and he actually ran away from his own stage, at the appointed time, because news broke that more charges were being put against him and his company. And so, like, I don't see that it lost any followers of the, whatever is left of the QAnon movement, the stragglers. They don't seem to ever realize that when these predictions don't happen, it means that they were lied to the whole time.
I don't know. When it comes to the event, didn't he try to blame Antifa on it or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty strange. That was my reaction too.
Yeah, well, Antifa is to blame for everything, from the weather to bad TV, right? I mean, it's just, I don't know. They just beat that horse a lot.
I suddenly think of that image. There's three different whatever you call those things, frames, and it shows someone riding a bicycle, and the middle one shows the person putting a stick right through the spokes while riding, and then the one on the bottom shows him, all bent over and such, and it says in the bottom it says, "Damn Antifa," right?
Right. Well, scapegoating. Funny thing, I just mentioned. Oh, go ahead, Raven. What are you gonna say?
Did Trump ride into DC in the back of an ass? I'm sorry, you can't ride your own ass. I mean,
that's pretty funny. Welcome back, Green Machine. Anyway, I gotta skate, but I can't skate till Joe comes back because he's got ops. Or I could just end the show, but then Joe's not back, and that doesn't seem right somehow. I don't know what to do. What a conundrum. Yeah, let's all go like this. Michael, really quickly, I saw earlier you were multitasking. What were you drawing?
I was sketching some people here, and basically taking, after having a screenshot, plotting out panels for painting, like pre-sketching something as a for later painting.
Are you going to be doing like a triptych or something?
No, but like Joe is preparing for a return to YouTube and regular production, I'm preparing to do some of the things that I want to do. I'm not going to talk about Star Trek like ad nauseum for video after video. Not that there's anything wrong with that if that's your thing, but I did figure that I might be painting while I talk, a little bit more. Kazoom knows that I used to do this, and I've lost a taste for a lot of the things that I've done in the past on YouTube, and I just want to do the things that I do want to do. I recently purchased a Bob Ross action figure.
As you do?
Because I'm trying to just listen to Bob Ross's voice and just let it calm me the fuck down. And so
you have a screen in the back you pull out of it, and it says try and relax, everything's going to be all right, or what? I mean, I don't know.
Happy little trees.
No. When you pull the string and then you let go and it goes, shh, just take it. Okay, never mind.
Go ahead and scream. No one's going to hear you. Yeah.
So Bob, I mean, I love listening to him because it's nonsense. I mean, it's while he's painting. I mean, it's just I don't know. Maybe there's a little tree here. Maybe it's got a friend. There's a couple of them. Happy little trees living alone in the field. Maybe there's a squirrel. Maybe not. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about?
So yeah, it's just there's a lot of prep work to some of the stuff that I want to do, and I actually want to do some of it just learning. There's a lot that I don't know how to do, and I've been inspired to try to combine some other things that I want to do. I might take a course in art therapy, which would be over and above my degree and license that I already have. But after the pandemic is over, maybe someone could come do art therapy with me in my office. It'd be really hard for me to do on Zoom with someone,
Yeah, right.
If I could combine all the things in my life that bring me joy,
Wow, that's a mind-boggling concept. When you said that, I thought, oh wow, combine all the things in my life that bring me joy.
If there could be a conversion and like less of the shit that I don't like.
I mean, I like death and shopping malls.
So does Kazoom. He's toured a few dead shopping malls.
Actually, yeah, some of the stuff that you put on Facebook with like pictures of like old malls and stuff, I love that shit.
Yeah.
I do. I absolutely love that shit. I mean, do you have videos of that stuff?
Yeah.
I gotta find them. I gotta check them out. I love that shit.
Are shopping malls still a thing?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they're going away, and that's why so many people are trying to get a footage of them, because it's just like, yeah, this we're looking at the end of an era.
Right.
We really are. It's in even just 5 years, there's probably not even half the malls that are around now will be around anymore.
I don't know. I mean, they're still pretty big here. We just built a brand new one here. It's big, massive. The traffic to get into it, you have to sit in traffic for like a half an hour just to get into the parking lot.
Two of our malls.
If you're a rock in New Jersey, you hit a mall. So.
Two of our malls have been turned into Amazon fulfillment centers.
Wow.
They're already there with good bus lines and good parking spaces, and they just took them over and just
smart. That's
Amazon
smart.
Fulfillment.
Yeah.
Wow.
But I find it interesting that there are so many malls that have closed in Pennsylvania. I don't know what it is. It's just like Pennsylvania has more closed malls than any other state that I can think of, and it's not even that big of an area. So,
in the early 80s, I think it was 1980, in my hometown Santa Rosa, they built the Santa Rosa Plaza, which was like 8 or 9 blocks long, right in the middle of town. They demolished a whole bunch of stuff to make it, and it was a really, really big deal locally for a really long time. And in the early 80s, shopping malls seemed to be springing up all over the place, certainly in California, where I was from. And I went down to Southern California once to this shopping mall called the Galleria, and it was the biggest fucking monstrosity I'd ever seen in my life. I mean, I remember thinking to myself, the Vatican can't be this big. It was humongous. And I wonder if that mall still exists now. You know what I mean? Because shopping malls can't compete with the internet anymore. They just can't. And that's the main thing. I mean, why walk around a crowded mall and when you could just go click, 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 there, I'm done,
Yeah, and why surround yourself with things to try to tempt you to buy other things? You just want to get what you want and leave. And malls don't offer that. Really, you gotta walk through all this other crap.
Right. Which was kind of the point originally. It was like shopping on your local high street, but with a roof over the head. So therefore you weren't going to get rained on. You could hang out for as long as you wanted. And certainly in the early days when shopping malls were brand new, it was where all the teeny boppers went for their socialized, after school social stuff. And weekends are completely full of teenagers.
Yeah, the arcade and movie theaters, and there's food. There's, a lot of malls had entertainment. It's, all kinds of stuff going on. Amusement park rides. Yeah.
Santa Claus.
Yeah. And I mean, like I said, I'm in New Jersey. I mean, shopping malls. That's what we do.
Speaking of Santa Claus, Kazoom, what about this Christmas? You up for it? You should totally apply to be a Santa Claus, dude.
No,
Come on. You know you want to.
no,
Well,
not
you
interested.
Just don't like the kiddies then. Is that what it is?
Eh,
They bug you.
nah.
I think you'd make a great Santa. I do.
You should cultivate the laugh just in case you need like a few extra bucks. You know?
Easy. Ho, ho, ho.
I mean, those outfits.
Oh,
were
no,
easy.
I'll ruin it and go, yeah,
Yeah, I guess scare the kids away. That'd be great.
If you did, I would dress up as an elf for you. See, Paul's eyes got big there because I'd be a pretty big elf. It'd be funny.
Well, what's his name? Oh, I can't even think of his name now. He's really funny. He played the elf anyway in the movie Elf. So whatever his name is. Why can't I think of his name?
Nobody's
He's Will Ferrell.
You let him know. We were going to keep him stumped the whole time. This whole time, I can read Paul's mind. He's saying, "Pinch it off, Joe. It's time to end the show."
Pinch that loaf, bro. Yeah. No, seriously. Yeah.
I hope he's all right.
Yeah, I'm sure he's fine. I am going to end the show, though, and we can chat afterwards in the after broadcast. But I want to thank everybody in the comment section for being probably the most well-behaved audience I can think of for quite some time. The ones that are still here, anyway.
Yeah, they were very commenting.
Yeah. Anyway, so say goodbye, everybody, and I'm going to end the broadcast. We'll see you next week on the Breakfast Club.
Bye,
Ciao.
everybody.